Chapter 3762. According to common sense, being thrown down from the second floor, even an ordinary person wouldn't end up in such a miserable state, let alone a powerful cultivator like him. But the problem was, what really threw him down was not the height of the second floor, but the powerful Jinqi that the four experts had deliberately wrapped around him. Even if they did not kill him, just the impact alone was enough to make him suffer. If it was his disciple, Yuzha, a middle-stage foundation establishment expert, then it wouldn't be as simple as falling down. He would probably die on the spot with blood flowing out of his orifices. Under the curious and gloating gazes of the passers-by, Nan Tianyong couldn't help but be flustered and exasperated. Although he didn't dare to go up to the door, he pointed at the second-floor window and was about to curse. But before he could curse, the four powerful auras from upstairs locked onto him. Their killing intent was faintly discernible. If he showed the slightest bit of disrespect at this time, it seemed that these four guest experts would kill him at any time. Although businessmen paid attention to harmony and wealth, and Nan Tianyong was very certain that Hong Zhong wouldn't kill him today, these four guest experts were different. Hong Zhong was a businessman, but the four of them weren't. They were only guests responsible for peaceful times, and the Hong Chamber of Commerce didn't have much of a restriction on them. What's more, all experts had their own pride. If a clown like Nan Tianyong repeatedly challenged their bottom line, killing him would be like killing a chicken. This was the recognized privilege of experts in the cultivation world. Even if Soaring Sky Pavilion pursued this matter, it would be useless. Facing the cold killing intent of these four guest experts, Nan Tianyong immediately swallowed back the vulgarities at the corner of his mouth. He was reckless, but he wasn't stupid. If he was really stupid, even if he had a powerful background, he wouldn't be able to reach this point. Hong Zhong stood at the window and saw Nan Tianyong's sullen expression. He said lightly, "Take care, I won't send you off." Although his voice wasn't loud, it was like a heavy hammer. Every word struck the chest of everyone present, especially Nan Tianyong, who bore the brunt of it. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. His expression was extremely ugly. However, while his expression was unsightly, Nan Tianyong was extremely shocked in his heart. This was because Hong Zhong had always been amiable. He had always thought that this old man was just a lackey of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. He didn't expect that he was an existence even more terrifying than the four foreign chamberlains. Just based on the strength that Hong Zhong had revealed at this moment, killing him would be as easy as crushing an ant. To think that he had recklessly provoked Hong Zhong earlier. Now that he thought about it, he broke out in cold sweat. Just now, it was as if the god of longevity wanted to hang himself. Was he tired of living? In the face of such a disparity, even if Nan Tianyong was used to being rude and overbearing, he could only bow his head and admit defeat for the time being. He covered his face and fled, causing the passers-by around him to burst into laughter. Some of them knew Hong Zhong. They all gave him a thumbs up and cheered. Hong Zhong looked at this scene and smiled slightly. He politely cupped his hands towards the people downstairs to express his gratitude. However, a few guests who were familiar with Hong Zhong found an opportunity to remind him, "Shopkeeper Hong, although this Nan Tianhai is an idiot, he has two other brothers who are far more powerful than him. They are also rude and unreasonable, and they have a good reputation on the North Island. Of course, their reputations are not good. You have to be careful in the future. Thank you for the reminder." Hong Zhong nodded and replied. He stroked his long beard and chuckled. "If they dare to come, just bring it on. Our Hong Chamber of Commerce is doing business, but sometimes we have to find an opportunity to show off our muscles. At least we have to intimidate some people with ulterior motives. Otherwise, if anyone dares to bare their teeth at us, it will be troublesome in the future, but there will be no end to it." Behind him was the Hong Chamber of Commerce, which was one of the top chambers of commerce in the entire 5 Heaven Stage Islands. The so-called 3 heroes of the Nan family were just local tyrants on the North Island. not to mention the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Even a newly promoted expert like Ram Jia of the Law Enforcement Hall could crush them to death with one hand. There was no need to take them seriously. If Nan Tianyong really didn't know what was good for him and went back to find his two brothers to stand up for him, Hong Zhong wouldn't mind suppressing the three heroes of the Nan family. After all, they could only do it once. He had tolerated them this time. If they came to pick a fight again, even if he killed them on the spot, the Rising Sky Pavilion wouldn't say anything. However, although Hong Zhong wasn't worried about his Hong Chamber of Commerce, he couldn't help but worry about Lin Er, whom he had just met once. Now that Nan Tianhai had suffered a setback, it was obvious that he wouldn't come to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to pick a fight in a short time. So the biggest way to vent his anger was Lin Er. Once they dug out Lin Er's identity, the consequences could be imagined. In front of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the three heroes of the Nan family were just ants that could be easily crushed. However, for an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm like Lin Er, he was a big shot. If someone really came to his door, there was nothing he could do. Hopefully, this Lin Er hid well enough that he wouldn't be found so easily. Otherwise, the Spirit Jade card that he had just given out would be for naught. To others, the storm caused by the Hong Chamber of Commerce was just a joke. But to this so-called Lin Er, it was a huge problem and even a matter of life and death. However, as the person involved, Lin Yi didn't know anything about this. At present, he was just an ordinary newcomer to the Blue Cloud Pavilion. He didn't know this so-called Lin Er, nor did he have any interaction with him. However, if Lin Yi said that he was just an ordinary newcomer, then all the other newcomers from the three great pavilions would be too ashamed to show their faces. He was the first newcomer from the three great pavilions to succeed in the foundation establishment realm, the only newcomer who could get full marks in the first two assessments, and the newcomer who could quickly recover from an attack from the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. If this could be said to be ordinary, then the others didn't need to live anymore. Of course, if the other newcomers who were already exhausted from cultivating 3 or 4 spirit herb seeds every day knew that Lin Yi could easily cultivate 85 spirit herb seeds at the same time, then they would probably all commit suicide together. Chapter 3763. However, for the rookies, the real challenge had only just begun. That was because the 4th rookie assessment segment was about to begin, and the content of this assessment segment was similar to the rookie assessment in previous years. It was the rookie challenge that everyone was familiar with. However, compared to the previous year's challenge, which was purely a head-on ranking, this rookie challenge segment was not only a competition between the 3 pavilions. In order to be integrated with the other assessment segments, it highlighted a point system. In this rookie challenge segment, every rookie's existing cave abode would be used as the initial ranking. The cave abode and corresponding points would be used as the spoils of war for each round of the challenge. The winner would be rewarded in real time. Naturally, the loser would also receive the corresponding punishment in real time. Taking the Blue Cloud Pavilion as an example, there were a total of 15 cave abodes at the foot of the mountain. They were divided into number 1 at the foot of the mountain to number 15 at the foot of the mountain. Each cave abode had a corresponding challenge point. Number 1 at the foot of the mountain was worth 15 points. Number 2 at the foot of the mountain was worth 14 points. Number 3 at the foot of the mountain was worth 13 points, and so on. The last cave abode, number 10 at the foot of the mountain, was worth 1 point. Every time, be it taking the initiative to issue a challenge or accepting a challenge, the rookie would have to use the challenge points corresponding to his cave abode as a bet. If the challenger won, he would obtain the challenger's challenge points and obtain the challenger's cave abode. If he lost, he would lose his challenge points, and the cave abode would remain unchanged. Of course, only the cave abode with a lower ranking had the right to take the initiative to challenge a cave abode with a higher ranking. Furthermore, the other party could not refuse the challenge. If it was a cave abode with a higher ranking, one could not take the initiative to challenge a cave abode with a lower ranking. For example, Lin Yi was in number 14 cave abode at the foot of the mountain. So he could only challenge the rookies in the first 13 caves, but he could not take the initiative to challenge Meng Tong, who lived in number 15 cave abode at the foot of the mountain. And if he took the initiative to issue a challenge to the rookies in the first 13 caves, for example, Li Jingming in number 2 cave abode at the foot of the mountain, then, in the challenge between the two, the challenge points that Lin Yi needed to take out would be the 2 points corresponding to his cave abode at the foot of the mountain. As for Li Jingming, due to his cave abode ranking being higher than Lin Yi, he could not refuse. Therefore, not only could he not refuse, but he also had to take out the 14 challenge points corresponding to the second cave abode at the foot of the mountain. If Lin Yi won, then he would get 14 challenge points from his opponent, and he would also get his opponent's second cave house at the foot of the mountain. On the other hand, not only would Li Zhengming lose 14 challenge points, he would also have to live in the 14th cave house at the foot of the mountain until the next time he challenged someone. On the contrary, if Li Zhengming wins, then he will get 2 challenge points from the opponent and continue to live in the second cave under the mountain without changing, while Lin Yi will have 2 challenge points deducted and continue to struggle in the 14th cave under the mountain. Apart from that, the most important thing was, in the 4th segment, every rookie's challenge points were given according to the different cave abodes. Every rookie would be given corresponding challenge points in the first round of the challenge competition. The rest of the points used were from the previous assessment segment. In other words, Lin Yi's initial points before the start of the challenge would be the 2 points corresponding to the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain, in addition to the 105 points he had obtained in the previous 2 rounds of assessment. Added together, it would be 107 points. Whether his points would increase or decrease would depend entirely on his performance in the upcoming Challenge League. However, not every rookie was as rich as Lin Yi. It had to be known that most of the rookie in the Blue Cloud Pavilion only had a total of 10 to 20 points in the previous 2 rounds. Even the initial points given in the challenge competition segment did not exceed 30 points. Using these points as the gambling capital, if they were not strong enough, or if they did not choose the right opponent, they might lose all these points after a few rounds of the challenge competition. In this way, no matter how low the ranking of the cave abode they were in, they would lose the right to take the initiative to challenge. And if someone came to challenge them, if they still lost, then the other party could normally obtain challenge points and cave abodes, but their points could only be deducted to negative points. Any rookie, once they were reduced to such a point, would basically say goodbye to the 3 great pavilions. This was because this was simply a stain that could not be erased. Even if they could successfully reach the foundation establishment stage in the future, the 3 great pavilions would definitely not accept such a rookie. After all, it was embarrassing to say it out loud. Apart from that, the challenge competition segment was the same as the elixir trial segment. It was a protracted battle that would last for a full 2 months. On every day ending with 3, 6, or 9, every rookie had a chance to issue a challenge and accept a challenge. And if more than one person issued a challenge to the same person, the person who issued the challenge first would obtain the right to challenge, and the challenge party would not be able to refuse. As for the other challengers, their challenge would be deemed invalid, and they could challenge other people. In this way, in the next 2 months, there would be a total of 18 rounds of challenge competition. Although not everyone would participate in every round of the challenge, the assessment points were not only directly related to the final reward for the rookies, but more importantly, it directly affected the evaluation of them by the 3 pavilions. It was related to their future, so it was not an exaggeration to say that the assessment points were their lifeblood. In such an environment, as long as there was a chance to obtain points, no rookie would easily let it go. And the challenge competition segment was the best way to make the competition as intense as possible. Unless they had completely given up hope, the rookies who were lagging behind would definitely not let go of any opportunity to challenge. When that time came, the difficulty of the challenge competition could be imagined. Don't forget this was not just 1 or 2 rounds. It would last for a full 2 months. Furthermore, other than the challenge competition, they also had to nurture the elixir seeds. Otherwise, even if they did well in the challenge competition, their points would ultimately be dragged down by the withered elixir seeds. When that happened, their points would be deducted instead, and all their hard work would be for naught. Therefore, between the challenge competition and the elixir seeds, everyone had to make a balance. The difference was just more inclined towards the challenge competition or more inclined towards the elixir seeds. After all, they were not linear. Everyone had a limited amount of vital energy. Once it was used up, they would need to spend a long time to recover. Chapter 3764, How to Maximize the Benefits, was definitely a skill that required careful consideration. If not, no matter how strong one was, it would be useless. There would be no benefits, and it would be impossible for one to have the last laugh. However, while the other rookies needed to ponder over this problem, Lin Yi and his lackeys did not have such worries. To them, the spirit herb seeds had been entrusted to Lin Yi, so the following mission was to do their best to deal with the challenge. They could go all out without any qualms. This was much better than the other rookies. After Hu Yunfeng explained the rules in detail, she allowed the rookies from the 3 pavilions to go back and prepare. As today was the 19th, it happened to be the day of the challenge. Therefore, the first round of the challenge would officially begin in the afternoon. There was not much time left for the rookies to prepare. After Hu Yunfeng finished her announcement, the rookies did not disperse. They gathered in groups of 2s and 3s to discuss countermeasures. After all, 3 was better than 1. If they were to go back alone and work behind closed doors, they might end up digging their own graves. And in such a group discussion, even if they were unable to confide in each other due to their competitive relationship, they would still be able to gain something. At the very least, they would not be left alone. The rules of this challenge are a little strange. I can't understand it. Xiao Hongkai scratched her head in confusion as she said to Senior Brother Bitter and Lin Yi. At the side, Xiao Ran nodded in agreement. Indeed, a little. Normally speaking, this kind of challenge is simple and direct. You just do your best to challenge as high a position as you can, and it won't be like this, where there are all sorts of restrictions that prevent people from going all out. Indeed, for the few of them, they did not need to worry about the matter of nurturing the spirit herb seeds like others. They already had a lot of worries, but even if it was just to deal with the challenge, there were still many tricks to the rules. It was not as simple and crude as in the past. For example, the challenge was 2 months long. Even if they did not have to worry about the supply of qi to the spirit herb seeds, they still had to allocate the points reasonably. If they were to overexert themselves at the beginning, it would be useless even if they temporarily obtained points. They would still lose due to a lack of strength later on. They might even lose more. Another example was that according to the challenge's rules, it was not that the higher the cave abode ranking, the better it was. It was true that obtaining a better cave abode could aid cultivation, and even nurturing the spirit herb seeds could benefit from it. But the problem was that this also meant a greater risk. Once they lost the challenge, the points they would lose would be much higher than those newcomers who had entered the cave abodes of inferior quality. For a newcomer like Xiao Ran, who was in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, although at first glance it looked very impressive, the cave abode was good, and the spiritual qi was enough to give him an advantage. Moreover, under this kind of rule, his initial points were only the points accumulated in the first 2 assessment rounds. Other than that, in this round, they would receive an additional 15 points corresponding to the first cave at the foot of the mountain, which was higher than all the other 14 caves. Everything seemed to be very beautiful, but this was just the surface. In fact, in terms of the announced rules of the challenge, Xiao Ran, who was in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, was definitely the most disadvantaged one among the 15 people. Not to mention that he would have to hand over all 15 points if he lost. The most crucial and fatal point was that, according to the rule that only those with a lower rank could challenge those with a higher rank, He had no right to challenge anyone, although the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain and the 15 challenge points were definitely the most important rewards in this round of the challenge, and there would definitely be newcomers who could not help but challenge him. The crux of the problem was that whether or not to issue a challenge and when to issue a challenge, these were all decided by these competitors. If the others had figured out this rule and recognized the potential disadvantage represented by the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, and arranged for it to be the final round 2 months later, then Xiao Ran would really cry himself to death. If there were no newcomers who took the initiative to challenge him in the first and middle stages, no matter how hard he worked, no matter how outstanding his strength was, it would all be in vain. He could only obediently stay in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, unable to do anything. On the other hand, Meng Tong, who was in the last cave abode at the foot of the mountain, might have the worst cave abode, but in fact he had a huge advantage. He could take the initiative to challenge any newcomer in the Blue Cloud Pavilion, and at the same time he could follow his own wishes and rhythm to maximize the points he earned in this round. To give a simple example, if he had absolute confidence in his own strength, then in the following 18 rounds, he could completely bide his time in the first 4 rounds. That way, no one could challenge him, and he would be in an absolutely safe position. And in the following 14 rounds, starting from the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain, he would challenge one person in each round, all the way until the final round, where he would challenge the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain. As such, if he could win all of them, then he would be able to obtain a stable number of points in each round, and it would only increase in the later rounds. Challenging the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain would give him 2 challenge points. The 13th cave abode at the foot of the mountain would give him 3 challenge points, all the way until the 15th cave abode at the foot of the mountain would give him a total of 119 challenge points. This was the challenge round. Putting aside the fact that other people would take the initiative to challenge him and give him points, in theory, the maximum number of points one could obtain would be much higher than the 3 assessment rounds that had already been completed or were in progress. It should not be forgotten that even Lin Yi, who had obtained full marks in the previous 2 rounds, only had a total of 105 points. He was still quite a distance away from the theoretical full marks for this round of the challenge round. And if other newcomers took the initiative to challenge him and give him points during this process, then the final number of points he could obtain would be even higher. Of course, this full marks was only in theory. After all, the difference in strength between newcomers was not too big, unless it was an expert at the peak of the early stage of the foundation establishment realm like Lin Yi, who had deliberately hidden his strength. It was extremely difficult for other newcomers in the Blue Cloud Pavilion to win all their matches. And even for an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm like Meng Tong, who had already successfully built his foundation, it was still quite difficult. Chapter 3765. However, even though that was the case, Meng Tong, the owner of Cave Mansion number 15 at the foot of the mountain, was indeed in the most advantageous position in the next round of the challenge. There was no doubt about this. Other than him, it was impossible for anyone else to obtain a theoretical full score of 119 points. It would only be lower than this, not higher. This was a congenital advantage, and no amount of effort could change it. So, from this point of view, on the first day he came to the Welcome Pavilion. Lin Yi snatched his cave mansion number 1 at the foot of the mountain and gave him the worst cave mansion number 15 at the foot of the mountain. In a sense, Lin Yi had helped him. After all, at that time, no one would have thought that the challenge would have such a rule. Facing Xiao Ran and Xiao Hongsai's complaints and confusion, the bitter senior brother analyzed. In fact, the purpose of the challenge rules is very obvious. It is to encourage the newcomers to fight with everyone else as much as possible. Only then can they hope to obtain as many points as possible. This way, they can see the potential and shortcomings of each newcomer to the greatest extent. The reflected points will also have reference value. That's right. If you blindly pursue a high ranking, Even if the challenge succeeds, it will be useless. After getting 15 points, you can only be like Xiao Ran now. You can't take the initiative to challenge and can only deal with the challenges. You will be in a completely passive position. This is very embarrassing. Instead, it is better to start from a low ranking and challenge one by one. This way, you can obtain more points. Lin Yi agreed. When Xiao Hongkai heard this, he finally figured out something. He suddenly realized something and said, "In that case, people like us who are in the lower ranking cave dwellings from the beginning have an advantage." He was in cave mansion number 13 at the foot of the mountain. Except for Lin Yi in cave mansion number 14 and Meng Tong in cave mansion number 15. His position was indeed more advantageous than other Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers. That's right. You just have to challenge one cave mansion at a time. With your current strength, you should still have a great chance to get a lot of points. Lin Yi nodded. Hee, I didn't expect our rotten cave mansion to have such benefits. It seems that the previous month was not in vain. Xiao Hongkai couldn't help but laugh. To newcomers who lacked cultivation resources like spirit jades, it was not easy to deal with them. The quality of a cave abode was crucial, especially for a newcomer like Xiao Hongkai, whose initial strength was not very outstanding. If not for Lin Yi's care, it would have been impossible for him to reach his current position, which was only a step away from foundation establishment. He could only sink into the bottom of the newcomers. If he did not have any other opportunities, he might not have any future in this life. However, with Xiao Hongkai's current strength, it was impossible for her to defeat him. Even if he hadn't successfully established his foundation, his strength was enough to rank in the top 5 among all the rookies in Blue Cloud Pavilion. Coupled with this extremely advantageous starting position, after formulating a challenge plan, there was indeed a high chance that he could earn a lot of points. On the other hand, although Xiao Ran's strength was above Xiao Hongkai's, he was placed in the most awkward position in Cave Mansion number 1 at the foot of the mountain. If there was no big turnaround, it would be very difficult for him to make any progress. Thinking of Xiao Ran's current awkward situation, everyone was momentarily at a loss for words. When Lin Yi gave him the cave mansion number 1 at the foot of the mountain, his original intention was to support his own people, and in the past month, Xiao Ran had indeed benefited a lot from it. According to Lin Yi's estimation, looking at the entire 3 major pavilions, apart from the 4 who had successfully established their foundation establishment, Xiao Ran was definitely one of the few remaining rookies who were closest to establishing their foundation establishment. Moreover, his strength was profound, not the least bit inferior to the few outstanding people in Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion. Once he succeeded in establishing his foundation establishment, even an expert like Meng Tong, who had established his foundation establishment earlier than him, might not be his match. However, no one had expected that. Lin Yi's well-intentioned decision would instead put Xiao Ran in such an awkward situation. Of course, this kind of thing could not be blamed on Lin Yi. Even Xiao Ran, the person involved, only had gratitude and worship for him, and never had any resentment for doing bad things with good intentions. It could only be said that fate made fools of people. The current situation was also unexpected. Lin Yi pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he suggested, "How about this, Xiao Ran? I'll exchange cave mansions with you. This way, you will be in cave mansion number 14 at the foot of the mountain, which will be in a more advantageous position like Hongkai. It will be convenient for you to compete for challenge points." As soon as these words came out, Senior Brother Kubai and the others were suddenly shocked, especially Xiao Ran, who was suddenly moved. "Absolutely not. Boss Lin Yi, it's rare for you to have such a high score before. It's a great opportunity for you to advance triumphantly and leave a deep impression on the higher-ups of the 3 pavilions. It's a great opportunity for you to pave the way for your future development. If you give up this opportunity for me, I can't afford it." After coming to his senses, Xiao Ran hurriedly refused. Lin Yi had a god-level appearance of full marks in the previous 2 rounds. If he could maintain this rhythm, then not only in Blue Cloud Pavilion, but also in Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion, he would definitely be worthy of being the number 1 newcomer. In the future, if he entered Blue Cloud Pavilion with such qualifications, he would definitely be recognized by the higher-ups and elders. In the future, it would not be a problem for him to soar into the sky. However, if he exchanged cave abodes with Xiao Ran now and took the initiative to jump into the pit of cave abode number 1 at the foot of the mountain, it would be very difficult for him to perform in the following rounds of the challenge. If no other newcomers came to challenge him, it would be useless no matter how strong he was. He could only watch helplessly as his competitor, Meng Tong, plunder points wantonly, and he would be powerless to do anything about it. It should not be forgotten that although Lin Yi had accumulated a lot of advantages in the previous 2 rounds, Meng Tong had the help of Meng Jueguang and the others after all. His performance was not bad either, and he was only 33 points behind Lin Yi. In this round of the challenge, the theoretical full marks were 119 points. Once Lin Yi fell into the pit of cave abode number 1 at the foot of the mountain and was unable to extricate himself, he would almost certainly be overtaken by Meng Tong, and there would even be a big gap because of this. In this way, the full marks he had obtained in the previous 2 segments would all be for naught. After all, the higher-ups and elders only looked at the final points and would not carefully analyze the performance of each round. At that time, the first place in Blue Cloud Pavilion was very likely to be Meng Tong, and Lin Yi could only settle for 2nd place at most. If that happened, he, Xiao Ran, would become a sinner for all eternity. Therefore, although he was very touched by Lin Yi's suggestion, he would never agree to it. Chapter 3766. Speaking of which, Xiao Ran was the same as Lin Yi. They were both rookies who were very close to him. Lin Yi took the initiative to propose to exchange caves with Xiao Ran. For him, as a senior brother, it was not appropriate to say such a thing. After all, it was likely to disappoint Xiao Ran. However, he had to say it because there was no 1st place in literature and no 2nd place in martial arts. The higher-ups of the 3 pavilions would only pay attention to the number 1 rookies. Other than that, it did not matter how many 2nd or 3rd places one obtained. If Meng Tong won 1st place in this newcomer assessment under such a good situation, it would be a painful loss. For their small group, it would be a great loss. For Xiao Ran alone, sacrificing the 1st place that Lin Yi had almost obtained was obviously not worth the loss. Forced to say so by his senior brother, Xiao Ran did not complain. Instead, he nodded and said, "That's right. Boss Lin Yi, as our pillar of support, you must put the overall situation first. You must not destroy your own great wall for me. Otherwise, I will not be able to live in peace for the rest of my life." Among them, the only one who did not speak was Qiao Hongkai. After all, Xiao Ran was also his brother. If Lin Yi did this for Xiao Ran, he could not say much. However, from his expression at the moment, he did not agree with Lin Yi's actions. It was good for the boss to be loyal, but if he was too loyal, he would take the initiative to fall into the trap and benefit a trash like Meng Tong. Just thinking about that scene made him extremely unhappy. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi smiled and said, "You guys are wrong. In fact, even if I exchange caves with Xiao Ran, Meng Tong has no possibility of surpassing me. Believe me, it is absolutely impossible." Xiao Ran and the senior brother couldn't help but look at each other. However, although the few of them were puzzled, it was indeed as Lin Yi had said. Even if he were to change to the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain, it was still impossible for Meng Tong to surpass him. At least, it was absolutely impossible in the first 4 rounds of assessment. First of all, Lin Yi had accumulated 105 points in the previous 2 rounds. In addition to the 15 points corresponding to cave abode number 1 at the foot of the mountain, it meant that even if no newcomers challenged him in this round, he could at least maintain a high score of 120 points. With his hidden peak early-stage foundation establishment strength, including Meng Tong, who was an early-stage foundation establishment expert, any Clear Cloud Pavilion newcomer would be crushed by him. In other words, no matter who took the initiative to challenge him, they would only give him free points, and his points would only increase, not decrease. On the other hand, Meng Tong had 72 points in the previous 2 rounds, adding the corresponding point for Cave Abode No. 15 at the foot of the mountain, his initial points for the challenge round were 73 points. And even if he followed the rule of maximizing points, all the way from Cave Abode number 14 at the foot of the mountain to Cave Abode number 2 at the foot of the mountain, and maintained a complete victory, he could only get 104 points at most. Adding the initial points, he had 177 points. If he wisely chose not to challenge Lin Yi, then after the challenge round, he could still lead Lin Yi by 57 points, which was a considerable difference. On the other hand, if he were to challenge Lin Yi on a whim, then not only would he lose 14 points, but he'd also gain 14 points for Lin Yi. He'd only be ahead by 29 points at the end of the day. With Meng Tong's hatred for Lin Yi and all the previous clamors, he would never let go of this rare opportunity. Otherwise, with so many newcomers watching, as the so-called boss of the newcomers, he would have no place to put his face. In addition, with the information provided by Li Jingming, when the time came, Meng Jueguang and the others might not stop him, because they also wanted to know how strong Lin Yi was. Meng Tong, who was the strongest among the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, was the best candidate to test Lin Yi. A difference of 29 points. This difference could not be said to be big for Lin Yi. Don't forget that he had chosen all 40 spiritual herb seeds in the trial round, with the innate advantage of the space in the jade pendant. Even if he disregarded the seed of the heart-devouring, exquisite grass that he had to keep among the remaining 39 spiritual herb seeds, it would not be a problem to cultivate 35 of them. When the time came, even if he deducted the 40 points he had to pay for the 40 spiritual herb seeds, he could still guarantee a net profit of 65 points. This was just a pessimistic estimate, but it was already far enough to surpass the difference of 29 points. In fact, even if Meng Tong tactfully chose to admit defeat and did not directly challenge Lin Yi, his final points from the first 4 rounds of the assessment would still not be as high as Lin Yi's. At that point, Lin Yi would have at least 185 points, while Meng Tong would only have 177. Of course, this point situation did not include Meng Tong's spiritual herb trial round, but it must be known that for the newcomers of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, where the spiritual energy in the cave abode was extremely poor, this round was a complete scam. Even if Meng Tong was like the other newcomers and very conservatively only received 10 spiritual herb seeds, he would have to ensure that at least 4 of them were cultivated to break even. Cultivating 5 would only net him a net profit of 40 points. For them, who did not have a cheating artifact like the space in the jade pendant, this was already a pie falling from the sky. As for 6 seeds, it was completely impossible. Therefore, even if Meng Tong optimistically cultivated 6 spiritual herb seeds, his final points from the first 4 rounds of the assessment would only be 184 points, which was still 1 point behind Lin Yi. And this was already the most optimistic estimate for him, while Lin Yi's side was the most pessimistic one. If there were newcomers who did not have eyes and gave him points in the challenge round, or if the spiritual herb seeds were cultivated to survive more, then Lin Yi's points would be even higher than this. In other words, no matter how it was calculated, Lin Yi would always be able to suppress Meng Tong, and he would not give his opponent any chance to overtake him. However, these calculations were only made by Lin Yi himself. Senior Brother Ku Bai and the others could not understand even if they racked their brains. After all, they did not know that Lin Yi actually had a magical artifact like the space in the jade pendant, which could guarantee the survival rate of the spiritual herb seeds. Although they could not understand, Seeing Lin Yi's confident look, they did not know what to say for a moment. Extraordinary people do extraordinary things. So far, there had been more than 1 or 2 miracles that had happened to Lin Yi. Some things they could not understand, but it did not mean that Lin Yi could not do it. However, Xiao Ran still hesitated, but... Chapter 37:67. At this point, Xiao Ran couldn't find a reason to refute, and he couldn't help but feel grateful. He knew that Lin Yi was only saying this to save him face. He was obviously helping him, but he insisted on saying that he needed the number 1 immortal's cave at the foot of the mountain. There probably wasn't a second boss in this world who took care of his underlings like this. Then, I'll be thick-skinned and accept it. Xiao Ran finally nodded heavily and didn't say anything else. With his reserved and low-key temperament, no matter how much Lin Yi helped him, he wouldn't say it out loud. However, if Lin Yi needed anything in the future, he would definitely be the most proactive one and wouldn't hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. In fact, Xiao Ran understood that it was only because he kindly reminded Lin Yi about Lu Taishou during the Heaven Stage trial in the secular world. In fact, with Lin Yi's strength, he didn't need his reminder at all. However, it was just this kind gesture that allowed him to obtain Lin Yi's friendship and come all the way until now. He knew that although Lin Yi didn't show any care during the trial and was still very indifferent when they arrived at Heaven Stage Island, it was most likely because of this that Lin Yi was able to accept him in the end. Similarly, although Lin Yi also took care of Xiao Honkai, he didn't give him as much benefits. This was something that Xiao Ran understood. That's a good brother. Lin Yi smiled and patted his shoulder. After a pause, he said, "You and Honkai don't need to worry about the spiritual medicine seeds like the others for a period of time. I think you can take this opportunity to prepare to break through to the Foundation establishment realm. After all, the 2 of you have Foundation establishment pills in your hands. There's no need to drag this matter for too long." The bitter senior brother nodded in agreement. Junior brother Lin is right. For us cultivators, no matter what rules, the most important thing is still strength. As long as you're strong, everything can be negotiated. Even if you fall behind temporarily, you can still catch up in the future. However, if you're not strong enough, no matter how good the position is, it's useless. So, strength is the way. Breaking through to the Foundation establishment stage? That's exactly what I'm thinking, Xiao Honkai said excitedly. To be honest, among them, he was the one who disliked Meng Tong the most. He could only watch helplessly as Meng Tong, this kind of trash, succeeded in building his foundation, while he himself was guarding the building foundation pill, not daring to take it. Needless to say, this kind of feeling was extremely sullen. If he maintained this state, when Meng Tong came to challenge him, he would be facing an early-stage foundation building expert. He, as a heaven rank, great perfection expert, didn't have the power to fight back. When the time came, he would inevitably be defeated by Meng Tong. There was no need to mention that kind of feeling. Just thinking about it made him feel so sullen that he would go crazy. Therefore, he had this planned for a long time. After listening to Lin Yi and senior brother Ku Bai's suggestions, he made up his mind. Regardless of whether he succeeded or not, he had to find an opportunity to attempt it in the near future. If he succeeded, then he would have the power to fight against Meng Tong. However, in comparison, Xiao Ran, whose strength and foundation were stronger and deeper than his, seemed a little hesitant. You're right, but without complete confidence, I'm afraid I'll waste this rare building foundation pill. He had already touched the barrier between heaven rank, great perfection, and early-stage foundation building. But for something like building a foundation, even with the help of the building foundation pill, there was still a possibility of failure. Moreover, the possibility was not small. With Xiao Ran's temperament of seeking for perfection, unless he was really prepared to the extreme, he wouldn't easily take this step. Although this temperament of yours is a good thing, sometimes it's better to take the initiative to take some risks. But sometimes it it was better to take the initiative to take some risks. After all, how could there be no wind and no danger when cultivating? Even if you fail this time, there's still a next time, right? Lin Yi smiled and explained. In his opinion, Xiao Ran was a very reliable person, and his talent was not bad. In the future, he would definitely become a great person. It was just that this guy was a little too eager for perfection, and sometimes he would become a burden. On the contrary, Qiao Honkai, who was actually not as confident as he was in breaking through to foundation building, was more courageous to take this step. Although this was a kind of rash in many people's eyes, sometimes it was also a manifestation of a kind of drive. After all, something like cultivation had always been sailing against the current. If one didn't take this step, he might fall behind from then on, and never have the chance to surpass others again. Hearing this, Xiao Ran couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Actually, Lin Yi didn't need to say this. He already knew this principle. In fact, his understanding of himself was much clearer than that of a bystander like Lin Yi. Being steady and low-key was an advantage, but sometimes it seemed to be overcautious, and it became a character weakness. With his current strength, in addition to the foundation-building pills he obtained from the back mountain trial, the certainty of breaking through to foundation building was not small, about 70%. If it was Qiao Honkai, there was no need for Lin Yi and senior apprentice Brother Ku Bai to remind her. She would already be eager to break through to foundation building, but he was still preparing. In his opinion, 70% certainty was not enough, and he had to wait until he had 80% or even 90% certainty before he was willing to take the risk. It couldn't be said that he was timid. This was completely his personality. He didn't make a move, but when he made a move, he must have absolute certainty. In other times, this wasn't a bad thing, but in the welcoming pavilion where the competition between the newcomers was fierce, it wasn't very suitable. Blindly hesitating like this, even if he originally had an advantage in strength, he would gradually be caught up to, or even surpassed. Under the encouraging gazes of Lin Yi and the others, Xiao Ran finally took a deep breath, nodded, and said in a deep voice, "Okay, I understand." He couldn't always be ridden by trash like Meng Tong. If nothing unexpected happened, he would soon have to face him in the challenge competition. At that time, he definitely couldn't let Lin Yi lose face. 70% certainty was already not small. It was time to take the risk. After all, Lin Yi's enemies were people like Su Lingchong and Meng Jueguang. If even to deal with a small fry like Meng Tong, he still had to force Lin Yi to personally take action, then it would be the negligence of him, Xiao Ran and Qiao Honkai, these little brothers. Lin Yi and senior apprentice Brother Ku Bai looked at each other and nodded in relief. As a small group, it was obviously not enough for Lin Yi to be strong alone. Everyone had to be strong and be able to take charge of an area by themselves. That way, in the future, they would have a greater right to speak and crush all the tigers that stood in their way. The few of them decided on a plan and immediately went to look for Meng Jueguang. After all, putting aside the matter of breaking through to foundation building, the matter of exchanging Immortal's cave between the newcomers still required the approval of the senior apprentice brother in charge. Chapter 3768. As the first round of the challenge was about to begin in the afternoon, they were prepared to let Meng Tong challenge Lin Yi as soon as Lin Yi's original position in cave number 14 at the foot of the mountain. After all, this was part of the challenge plan. Moreover, it could test the depth of Lin Yi's strength. It could be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Therefore, even Su Lingchong specially rushed over to support them. Unexpectedly, when the challenge was about to begin, Lin Yi came up with such a trick. I remember that Senior Meng said at the beginning that the Welcome Pavilion allows newcomers to exchange cave residences. Therefore, it shouldn't be a problem for us to do this, right? Lin raised his eyebrows and asked. Meng Jueguang and Su Lingchong looked at each other and quickly understood Lin Yi's intention. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that under the rules of the challenge, cave number 1 at the foot of the mountain was definitely the most awkward position. At this time, Lin Yi actually took the initiative to propose an exchange with Xiao Ran. This was clearly showing off. This kid was indeed a pretentious newcomer. He was always thinking of showing off in front of his lackeys. It was like he had a psychotic, obsessive-compulsive disorder. Although what you said is correct, now is a special period for the newcomer assessment. It doesn't seem appropriate to let you exchange cave residences at this time. Meng Jueguang said perfunctorily. Although he had already seen through Lin Yi's intention, he was not able to figure out the pros and cons in a short period of time. Therefore, he needed to delay a few words and think about it. Allowing newcomers to exchange cave residences is a rule in the Welcome Pavilion. Do you think that it has to be changed just because of a newcomer assessment at the last minute? Moreover, in the newcomer assessment rules, there's not a single rule that goes against it. What is wrong with what Senior Meng said? Please state clearly. Lin Yi still had a calm expression as he said this, but there was a hint of unquestionable tone in his tone. Even if Meng Jueguang did not agree, Lin Yi still had other ways. As long as he took the initiative to challenge Xiao Ran in the first round in the afternoon, then the two of them would go through the motions and defeat Xiao Ran. At that time, he would still be able to achieve the effect of exchanging cave residences. But in this way, compared to exchanging abodes in advance, for Xiao Ran, there was actually one less round of challenge opportunities and naturally less 2 points corresponding to abode number 14 at the foot of the mountain. Because if Lin Yi won against him as the owner of the 14th cave, although they would exchange cave residences, it would be a one-sided plunder in terms of points. Lin Yi would be able to get his initial 15 points. On the other hand, he couldn't get Lin Yi's initial 2 points, so from Xiao Ran's point of view, he was at a disadvantage. Of course, Xiao Ran didn't have any complaints about this, because the 2 points he lost didn't benefit anyone but Lin Yi. However, Lin Yi wasn't satisfied with it. Since he had proposed to exchange abodes with Xiao Ran, he didn't think much of the points. These points were useless to him, but to Xiao Ran it might be very crucial. It was fine if he didn't do it, but since he had decided to do it, he had to do it to the best of his ability. Now he was fighting for benefits for Xiao Ran. Lin Yi naturally would ignore it. Lin Yi's performance immediately moved the other rookies present. In order to help his underling out, he was willing to take the initiative to jump into a pit. It was truly rare to see a boss who loved his underling to such an extent. Among the crowd, Li Jingming was especially moved. Thankfully, he had the foresight to rely on boss Lin Yi early. If it were a crappy boss like Meng Tong, he wouldn't even need to take the initiative to jump into a pit. Forcing him to jump into a pit to help him out was more like it. F***K. Comparisons were odious, and goods had to be thrown away. He didn't sigh for no reason. After entering the welcoming pavilion for more than a month, he had encountered many such situations. In fact, ever since he took the initiative to get close to Meng Jueguang, not only did Meng Tong not take care of his underling, he had been scamming him. As he was defeated by Lin Yi in one move on the first day, Meng Tong could only hole up in the crappy cave abode at the foot of the mountain, number 15. As for Li Jingming, because he was taken care of by Meng Jueguang, he occupied the second cave abode at the foot of the mountain. Therefore, Meng Tong had been forcing him to take the initiative to change abodes. He refused, so he had all sorts of resentment and hatred. Then, when he went to the Spirit Jade Hall to mine, Meng Tong had been forcing him to contribute the spirit jades that he had dug out. He refused, so he had all sorts of resentment and hatred. After that, in the trial at the back of the mountain, Meng Tong had even forced him to count the spirit herbs to himself. Even if he had only given one less spirit herb in order to protect his position in the top 10, he had immediately been resentful and hateful. It was fine if he didn't think about him when there were good things, but when it came to bad things, he would be the vanguard to test Lin Yi. It was guaranteed that he would be the one. With all these misdeeds, putting Meng Tong, this idiot, together with Lin Yi was simply a great insult to boss Lin Yi. Even a trash like Meng Tong wanted to be the boss of the newcomers. What kind of rubbish was that? Facing Lin Yi's interrogation, Meng Jueguang looked at Su Lingchong and said, "Although there is indeed such a rule, what you guys are doing now is also taking advantage of a loophole. As the senior brother in charge of Blue Cloud Pavilion, it is not good for me to make a rash judgment. It just so happens that young Master Su is here. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees things clearly. I believe young Master Su will definitely be able to give a more reasonable and fair answer. I will explain the situation to young Master Su in detail. You just wait here for a while." After saying that, Meng Jueguang no longer paid attention to Lin Yi and the others. He followed Su Lingchong and the others to the side to discuss the matter. These guys are really sly. Even such a small matter needs to be discussed before giving an answer. How petty. Xiao Hongkai saw that these people were as if they were facing a great enemy. She couldn't help but sneer softly. Xiao Ran said with a smile, "They are afraid of Boss Lin Yi. I think they are afraid that there is some kind of conspiracy hidden in this. Gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a petty person. What a bunch of people." However, Lin Yi chuckled. "It doesn't matter. As long as their intelligence is slightly normal, they will be able to understand that doing this is actually a good thing for them. If they don't even have this bit of intelligence, then there is no need to take them seriously in the future. Jumping clowns are not worth mentioning." When the senior brother saw this scene, he couldn't help but sigh. As the senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Meng Jueguang was originally a very powerful person. As the senior brother in charge of the Blue Cloud Pavilion, Meng Jueguang didn't have any status in front of Meng Jueguang. He didn't even have the slightest bit of resistance. Chapter 3769. This Lin Yi junior brother really was like what senior brother Lu said. He was not someone to be trifled with. Sooner or later, he would be like miracle Dr. Zhang Liju, who also came from the common world, soaring into the sky and transforming into a dragon. Su Lingchong and Meng Jueguang went to a secluded corner and asked, "Old Meng, do you think that Lin Yi has other intentions for doing this? Although this guy isn't that smart, he wouldn't jump into a pit of his own accord, right?" Meng Jueguang frowned and thought for a while. "Master Su, I think that Lin Yi does not get any benefits other than buying people's hearts. This is set by the challenge rules. No matter how hard he tries, it's useless. Perhaps he's coveting the 15 initial points in the first cave mansion at the foot of the mountain?" Meng Tong suddenly said. Meng Jueguang rolled his eyes at him and couldn't help but scold him. "Are you an idiot? Even if you can get 15 points from the beginning, you can't take the initiative to challenge others to get points. You can only wait for others to challenge you. What's the use of guarding these 15 points?" However, Su Lingchong was a little hesitant. "Didn't you guys say that this guy chose 40 spiritual herb seeds in one go in the alchemy hall? If he changes to the first cave this time, not only will he be able to buy people's hearts and get 15 points, but because people don't want to enter the pit of their own accord, no one will be willing to challenge him in the first 10 rounds. That's right. This way, this guy can save his energy and focus on dealing with the 40 spiritual herb seeds, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. How cunning! Fortunately, young Master Su saw through it." Meng Tong chimed in. After Su Lingchong said that, even Meng Jueguang, who didn't think much of it, started to be more cautious. Li Jingming saw that and felt that things weren't looking good. If this continued, Lin Yi's plan to exchange with Xiao Ran would probably fall through. After all, the rules were set by people, and Su Lingchong was here. It would only take a few minutes for him to find an explanation to stop him. After pondering for a moment, Li Jingming suddenly said, "Young Master Su, Senior Brother Meng, I have an idea, but I don't know if I should say it." Meng Jueguang and Su Lingchong looked at each other. After all, apart from Meng Tong, Li Jingming was the newcomer that Su Lingchong valued the most. He immediately nodded and said, "Go ahead." "It's like this. I think that Lin Yi is overestimating himself. Previously, when he took the initiative to collect the 40 spiritual herb seeds, he was already seeking his own death. With the conditions of our Blue Cloud Pavilion's newcomers, no matter how much effort we put in, we won't be able to defeat him. These 40 spirit medicine seeds are basically all going to wither and die. Lin Yi, this brat, is no exception either, Li Zhengming said eloquently. When Su Lingchong, Meng Jueguang, and the others heard this, they nodded in agreement. In reality, to guarantee the survival rate of the spiritual herb seeds, it must be an especially built environment like the spirit medicine nursery. Otherwise, even with their conditions, it was impossible to guarantee the survival rate. Therefore, when Lin Yi said that he would choose all 40 seeds, he had already jumped into a deep pit. He couldn't even get out. After a pause, Li Jingming then continued, "Therefore, I think that even if we let him exchange abodes with Xiao Ran, it's still impossible to change this result. Moreover, to Boss Meng Tong, this is still a good thing that he couldn't ask for more." "What do you mean?" The few of them were instantly stunned. Li Jingming said slowly, "In reality, if the normal development continues, Lin Yi, this brat, would have dug his own grave in the spiritual herb trial segment. Therefore, as long as Boss Meng Tong follows the plan to win points, he will definitely be able to overtake him. However, if Lin Yi is left at the 14th cave abode at the foot of the mountain, there will be a big variable that can easily ruin things." Meng Jueguang was also an astute person. Li Jingming's words came to this point. She understood what he meant. "Zhengming, are you saying that when the time comes, Lin Yi will probably come and challenge Meng Tong every time Meng Tong challenges someone higher up?" Meng Jueguang gasped. "Not bad." Li Zhengming nodded. "Although Boss Meng Tong is already an early-stage foundation establishment expert, that kid Lin Yi also can't be underestimated. Last time he was able to withstand a full power strike from a peak early foundation establishment cultivator. Boss Meng Tong's situation isn't too optimistic." "What the F***CK are you talking about?" Meng Tong was instantly displeased. Lin Yi was his archenemy. This kid, Li Jingming, actually dared to say that his situation wasn't optimistic in front of young Master Su. This was practically asking for trouble. "You're the one talking nonsense." Meng Jueguang glared at him. Between Meng Tong and Lin Yi, it was obvious who was stronger and who was weaker at a glance. This was something that could be seen by anyone with discerning eyes. Naturally, they wouldn't be so stupid as to deceive themselves. Next, even if they arranged for Meng Tong to fight against Lin Yi, it was only to test the depth of Lin Yi's strength. They never expected him to win. Otherwise, if Lin Yi was so easy to deal with, would they still need to worry about it here? Only then did Meng Tong snort resentfully. In fact, even he himself, who was bursting with confidence after successfully building his foundation, didn't dare to say that he would be able to deal with Lin Yi. He thought that he only had a 30 to 40% chance of winning. Little did he know that, with his meager strength, he didn't even have the slightest chance of winning against Lin Yi. 30 to 40%? Nonsense in your dreams. Zhengming's concern is very reasonable. If every time Meng Tong challenges a higher rank, and Lin Yi immediately challenges him and beats him back to his original position, in the end, Meng Tong won't be able to get any points in this challenge round. Instead, all of it will go to Lin Yi. In this way, these points will even be enough to make up for his loss in the spiritual medicine trial round. Meng Tong won't have any chance to overtake him. Meng Jueguang said in deep thought. For the sake of the managing senior brother's face, he wholeheartedly wanted to kick Lin Yi down from the number 1 position. If he took the initiative to block Meng Tong's promotion path in order to prevent Lin Yi from getting what he wanted, it would obviously be a loss that would outweigh the gain. Not only him, even Su Lingchong, the outsider, was especially unhappy when he saw Lin Yi's points at the top of the list. In other words, if we take the opportunity to agree to Lin Yi's pretentious request, then we can kick him away and not give him any chance to cause trouble. Su Lingchong nodded thoughtfully. Young Master Su is wise. That's exactly the reason. Meng Jueguang hurriedly flattered. Anyway, there will be opportunities to test his strength in the challenge round. Why not leave it to the end? At that time, the matter will already be settled. No matter if Meng Tong wins or loses, Lin Yi can only be sullenly stepped on. Since this brat wants to act pretentious, then let him do it. Young Master Su, what do you think? Chapter 3770. After all, Meng Tong was not like Kong Mingming. These people were young Master Su's direct subordinates. For people like Meng Jueguang who were full of tricks, young Master Su still had the idea to take them in. However, for trash like Meng Tong, even if he took the initiative to join him, he would not be interested. Of course, now that it was to deal with Lin Yi, it was a different matter. For him, if he could see Lin Yi being trampled on, it would be a great enjoyment. However, even with his background, it was fine to help Meng Tong once in a while. If he had to bleed in every round of the challenge, it was not only unrealistic but also unnecessary. After all, Meng Tong's mission was only to test the depth of Lin Yi's strength. If they counted on him to directly kill Lin Yi, even if young Master Su helped him, it could only be said that they were indulging in fantasy. After the few of them reached a consensus, Meng Jueguang immediately turned around and said to Lin Yi, "Since you have made up your mind to exchange abodes with Xiaoran, and there is indeed such a rule, then as the big senior brother in charge, it will not be good for me to stop you." "All right, I agree to this matter." "All right, then thank you for your understanding, senior brother Meng." Lin Yi smiled faintly. This answer was already within his expectations, and there was nothing surprising about it. Junior brother Lin Yi is too polite. When Meng Jueguang, Su Lingchong, and the others saw Lin Yi's calm and pretentious manner, they could not help but snicker in their hearts. What did it mean to have a simple brain but strong limbs? This Lin Yi was a typical example. Although his strength was not weak, he was helpless against his intelligence. Since you foolishly jumped into the pit, then don't even think about coming out. When the matter is settled, then I'll let Meng Tong weigh you and see how much you're worth. After Meng Jueguang nodded, Lin Yi only needed to report this matter to the welcoming pavilion, and then Lin Yi would be able to exchange cave residences with Xiaoran. Moreover, in the first round of the challenge in the afternoon, Xiaoran would be able to take the initiative to challenge others as the owner of Cave Residence number 14 at the foot of the mountain and compete for challenge points. Time passed in a flash. Afternoon, the rookies of the 3 pavilions once again gathered in the Welcome Pavilion's main hall, preparing to begin the first round of challenges. Facing this challenge round that was similar to the assessment system of previous years, all the rookies could not help but feel nervous and excited. Although this was the 4th assessment segment and the rookies should be very used to the assessment's rhythm, this was different from the previous 3 assessment segments. The first 3 weren't easy. However, in the end it was a one-sided assessment. Those with strength could score, and those without strength could not score. There weren't many variables or surprises, but it was different this time. The challenge round was highlighted by competition, a brutal competition between rookies. There were too many variables and accidents in this, and it wasn't something that could be solved with just strength. Planning and luck were important elements. If one didn't prepare a strategy beforehand, it might not be useful even if one was strong. Once one was targeted, one wouldn't even know how they died. Whether to take the initiative to challenge, when to initiate the challenge, and what to do when dealing with the challenge. Should they go all out to obtain points, or should they show weakness to preserve their strength, or even retreat in order to gain room for maneuver? These were the key questions that every rookie present had to consider. If they could not give the most suitable answer, then even if they were stronger than others, they would still end up nursing a grievance in the end. After Hu Yunfeng announced on stage, the first round of the challenge officially began. The rookies of the 3 pavilions were split into 3 regions. They carried out the challenge at the same time, but for a moment the scene was somewhat awkward. None of the rookies from the 3 pavilions took the initiative to challenge the other rookies. It wasn't surprising that such a scene appeared. In fact, anyone with a bit of brains could figure out the trick behind it. One had to know that according to the rules of the challenge, in every round, every rookie had a chance to initiate a challenge. It was optional, but don't forget that everyone had a chance to be challenged at the same time. This was something that couldn't be avoided. If you were really chosen, you wouldn't be able to escape. As such, a problem arose. Once you took the initiative to challenge someone, regardless of whether you won or lost, it would inevitably consume a large amount of your chi. Even if you were stronger than others, once someone took advantage of your weakness and forced you to accept the challenge, it wouldn't bode well for you. After all, everyone was a rookie. Even if there was a gap between them, it wouldn't be that big. Of course, a freak like Lin Yi was an exception. Therefore, for any newcomer, the most frightening situation was that after they had just challenged someone, they would immediately be taken advantage of by someone else. That would be a huge loss. Therefore, the current stalemate was inevitable. In fact, when the rules were formulated, the upper echelons had already considered such a situation. There were also people who suggested setting up some additional, corresponding rules. For example, all challenges had to be reported in writing before the challenge began. Another example was to stipulate that every rookie had the right to be exempted from the second round. In other words, as long as they had taken the initiative to challenge someone before, they could not accept anyone's challenge in this round. This way, they could avoid the awkward situation of being afraid of each other in public. There were many such suggestions. At least, the rules would look more fair and reasonable. Furthermore, it would also protect the rookies. Fists and feet had no eyes. It wasn't rare for casualties to occur during a battle. In fact, in the past, there would be a few deaths every year. And if one was forced to participate in a battle when they weren't in the best condition, the possibility of casualties would only be higher. However, in the Elders' Council, Soaring Pavilion's pavilion master, Shanghai Tianhua, suddenly said something that made everyone shut up. What's the purpose of the rookie assessment? Isn't it to let the rookie with the most potential stand out? If they can't even deal with such a small problem, then what's the point of setting up some protective rules? Even if the rookie stands out, what's the use? Can he be the pillar of the 3 pavilions? As soon as he said that, the other elders were speechless. With Shanghai Tianhua's monstrous power, even the other big shots of the Elders' Council wouldn't dare to disobey him. In fact, when the welcoming pavilion submitted the assessment rules, Shanghai Tianhua scoffed at it. Chapter 3771. After all, in the world of cultivation, there was no such thing as fairness, artificially creating a fair environment. But in the end, the people that were selected would have to face a completely unfair and cruel world. Tragedies often occurred in this way. But in the eyes of a powerful figure like Shanghai Tianhua, it was similar to the cruel and primitive competition of 10 dogs that could truly select the most promising newcomers. If 10 puppies were thrown into the cave and killed each other, the last one to survive would definitely be the strongest one. This was the law of nature, cruel and simple, but extremely effective. However, although Shangguan Tianhua felt disdain towards the suggestions of the Council of Elders, as the high and mighty pavilion master of the Soaring Sky Pavilion, he could not possibly interfere in every matter, no matter how big or small. Otherwise, others would say that he was stretching his hand too far. The reason why he had spoken up this time was because these people were taking the rules of the trial too seriously. For the mighty Council of Elders to actually spend half a day discussing the rules of the welcoming pavilion, Shangguan Tianhua could not bear to watch any longer. That was why he had spoken up to reprimand them. Of course, this involved all sorts of behind-the-scenes games between the giants. Some people wanted to make a mountain out of a molehill and use this to expand their influence. But Shanghai Tianhua wanted to suppress these signs. There was no need for outsiders to know about all these things. Let's not talk about the games between the Elders' Guild's higher-ups. But after Shanghai Tianhua spoke, at least there was no objection to this point. Without the protection of the corresponding rules, how to break this awkward stalemate would be left to the newcomers to solve themselves. Because of all sorts of concerns, the ordinary newcomers did not dare to take the initiative to challenge. But the truly powerful newcomers would definitely not be bound by such a small problem. Otherwise, if no one dared to break the stalemate, then it could only be said that this year's Welcome Pavilion did not have any strong people. At least, there was absolutely no peerless genius like the current hall master of the Law Enforcement Hall, Ramjia. As expected, the awkward stalemate did not last long. In less than half an incense stick of time, it was broken, and the first person to issue a challenge was unexpected, but reasonable. It was the Blue Cloud Pavilion's Meng Tong. Meng Tong was the first to take the stage. His invasive gaze slowly swept across the faces of every Blue Cloud Pavilion rookie. Every rookie that was swept by him would subconsciously shrink their necks, not daring to meet his gaze. This kind of domineering feeling that no one dared to challenge was something that Meng Tong had been dreaming of ever since he entered the Welcome Pavilion, but he had never been able to achieve it. What was being in the limelight? This was truly being in the limelight. Meng Tong couldn't help but let out a proud laugh. He was so arrogant that it was a complete mess. Why is this idiot so arrogant? If Boss Lin Yi wasn't in the number 1 cave abode and couldn't take the initiative to challenge others, would it even be his turn? When there's no tiger in the mountain, the monkey becomes the king. Qiao Hongkai cursed. Looking at the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion, there were only 2 people who had the strength to surpass the other rookies. One was Lin Yi. The other was Meng Tong. As for the others like Xiao Ran and Li Jingming, although they had a huge advantage in terms of strength when facing the other Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies, in the end, they were only Heaven Stage Full Circle. Even if they were stronger than other Heaven Stage Full Circle experts, they wouldn't be able to completely crush them. To put it bluntly, the only ones who had the absolute strength to crush the other Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies were Lin Yi and Meng Tong. Because the 2 of them had already successfully built their foundation, they were already completely above these Heaven Stage Full Circle newcomers. They could absolutely crush them one-on-one. That was a matter of course. And now, because Lin Yi had swapped cave abodes with Xiao Ran, he took the initiative to jump into the pit and was unable to extricate himself. Then, the only one who had the capital to be in the limelight was Meng Tong. After all, the strength of an early-stage foundation-building expert was right there. This was a fact that no matter how much Qiao Hongkai disliked Meng Tong, it couldn't change. Listening to Qiao Hongkai's complaints, Lin Yi and the others looked at each other and smiled. This guy was at a disadvantage because he couldn't take the initiative to challenge Meng Tong, who had a lower ranking in the cave abodes. Otherwise, with his personality, he might be the first person to jump out and take the initiative to challenge Meng Tong. Let's see who this guy plans to challenge. If I'm not wrong, he should start with the 2 of you. Lin Yi speculated. Sure enough, before Lin Yi finished speaking, Meng Tong on the stage locked onto Xiao Ran, who was beside him, and said loudly with a disdainful and proud expression, I'm Meng Tong from cave abode number 15. Challenge Xiao Ran from cave abode number 14. As soon as he said that, the other Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies clearly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, their gloating gazes all focused on Xiao Ran. Although strictly speaking, Meng Tong and them were all in Meng Jueguang's faction, it was precisely because there were too many people in their faction that they didn't receive any benefits or care. Points were related to one's future. Meng Tong wouldn't give up, and neither would they. And if Meng Tong wanted to rise, he would have to step over their corpses in the end. This was unavoidable. However, before being stepped under Meng Tong's feet, being able to see Xiao Ran fall before them was still a delightful scene. Although he was already mentally prepared for this, when it really happened, Xiao Ran was still slightly stunned. Only then did he take a step towards the stage. Don't try too hard. Pay attention to protect yourself. It's not too late to get back at him after you reach foundation establishment. There's still a long way to go before the match. If you can't do it, just admit defeat. Lin Yi suddenly reminded him from behind. Although Xiao Ran was very strong, there was still a huge gap between him and an early-stage foundation establishment expert like Meng Tong. He had almost no chance of winning. However, Lin Yi wasn't worried that Xiao Ran would be so hot-blooded that he would fight to the death with Meng Tong. What he was worried about now was that Meng Tong would take the opportunity to kill Xiao Ran in the match. The nature of the challenge was actually equivalent to a duel. Although there were some emergency measures, it never avoided life and death. As the saying goes, fists and feet have no eyes. Life and death are fated. This was the natural rule of the arena. Even the welcoming pavilion, which had always been very protective of newcomers, was no exception. Just like the duel between newcomers, the challenge did not have any forbidden moves or other restrictions. Even if the opponent was killed on the stage, there would be no pursuit of any responsibility. However, there was one point. This kind of challenge clearly stated that no weapons could be used. After all, a divine weapon could greatly affect a person's strength. If a heaven stage, great perfection newcomer suddenly took out a powerful divine weapon, it was even possible for him to challenge an early stage foundation establishment expert. This was obviously unreasonable. After all, the welcoming pavilion needed powerful newcomers, not parasites that relied on divine weapons to survive. Chapter 3772. However, even without using weapons, with Meng Tong's current strength, if he really wanted to take the opportunity to kill Xiao Ran, he still had a great deal of confidence. Judging from the hostile position of both parties, the possibility of this happening was more than 90%. Since he couldn't deal with Lin Yi directly, then he would start with his underlings. This was the simplest logic. Listening to Lin Yi's reminder, Xiao Ran's body paused, then he turned around and smiled. "I understand, I will protect myself." After saying that, Xiao Ran walked into the ring with his head held high. He didn't show any signs of nervousness, and his expression was as calm as water. It gave people the feeling that he was more confident than Meng Tong. Damn, this guy can't be like Lin Yi, a person who hides his strength, right? Looking at Xiao Ran's behavior, Meng Tong couldn't help but mutter in his heart. In fact, as Lin Yi thought, Meng Jueguang did give some instructions to Meng Tong beforehand. He told him to kill as much as possible when fighting against the two underlings of Lin Yi, Xiao Ran, and Xiao Honkai. However, looking at the situation before him, Meng Tong couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Although they had been focusing on Lin Yi and ignored the two underlings Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai, don't forget that during the trial at the back mountain, they had fought against each other. At that time, Meng Tong hadn't succeeded in building his foundation, and Xiao Ran was exhausted by their numbers. However, his strange and mysterious shadow step left a deep impression on everyone. How could someone with such a body movement technique be an ordinary person? Although Meng Tong had always been arrogant, he wasn't so bad that he couldn't see through people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it to where he was today. Walking into the ring, Xiao Ran's expression was as calm as an ancient well. He stared back at Meng Tong without backing down. Although the aura around him was still calm and indifferent, if one were to carefully sense it, they would be able to sense the powerful battle intent hidden within. For a moment, the group of rookies who were gloating at the misfortune of others immediately shut their mouths. Like Meng Tong, they had more or less seen Xiao Ran's strength, at least during the trial at the back mountain. Other than being outnumbered and having to choose to escape, he was not at a disadvantage against them. He wasn't as pathetic as Xiao Honkai. Xiao Ran was a strong man, and while he wasn't a freak like Lin Yi, he wasn't a weakling that couldn't be done without. This was the consensus between the two. Looking at the stage, Xiao Ran was calm when facing Meng Tong. The rookies vaguely had a feeling that maybe Xiao Ran had no chance of winning. "Tisk, you're just a weakling at heaven stage great perfection. What are you pretending for? Of all the things you can learn, you have to learn from some idiot who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. But since I'm in a good mood, I can teach you a lesson. Meng Tong suddenly sneered, but it's understandable. Your boss is the king of acting tough among rookies. He had already reacted. So what if Xiao Ran wasn't simple? As long as he hadn't built his foundation, he would never be his match. The only difference was that he had to spend more effort. Before Xiao Ran could speak, Qiao Hongkai couldn't help but jump out to defend him. Rookie Ming, may I ask you, can you add another color on top of black? Adding another color to the pitch black surface. Other than black, what else could you do? I'm not well educated, so don't lie to me. As soon as he finished speaking, the entire audience burst into laughter. When Meng Tong reacted, his face instantly turned the color of a pig's liver. I'm not well educated, so don't lie to me. Since you're not well educated, how did you become a heaven stage great perfection? Are you going to say that you can't even recognize words? If it weren't for the fact that he was standing in the ring, Meng Tong would have rushed over and trampled on Qiao Hongkai. When his IQ was reduced to a laughing stock, even if he was an early-stage foundation establishment expert, what use was that? Lin Yi smiled and nodded at Qiao Hongkai. This Qiao Hongkai was still very courageous. He dared to speak his mind at the beginning, and it was the same now. As for Meng Jueguang and the others, they could only hold their foreheads speechlessly. Meng Tong was really useless. Fortunately, they didn't expect this guy to be able to deal with Lin Yi. Otherwise, they would really be blind. Meng Tong was helpless. He could only glare at Qiao Hongkai, then turn to the referee specially sent by the 3 pavilions to supervise the fairness. He suppressed his anger and said, "Sir Referee, can we begin?" The referee was not a disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion, but a disciple of Mysterious Pavilion who was specially assigned here to prevent under-the-table manipulation. Seeing this, he smiled nonchalantly and announced, "Both sides are ready. The first round of the newcomer challenge will now begin." Meng Tong immediately laughed sinisterly. The aura of an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm was fully displayed. From the looks of it, he planned to go all out to kill Xiao Ran. He was prepared to kill to vent his anger. After all, there was an absolute suppression in their levels. No matter how powerful Xiao Ran was, facing an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm who was going all out was still quite dangerous. It would not be an exaggeration to say that the odds were against Xiao Ran. However, Meng Tong summoned his monstrous aura. Before he could make a move, Xiao Ran turned to the referee and said 3 words calmly, "I give up. F***CK. Meng Tong almost couldn't catch his breath. His body instantly felt a stab of pain, and he was about to spit out a mouthful of blood. The audience was in an uproar. They looked at each other in disbelief. He acted like an expert for a long time. Not only did he tease Meng Tong, but even the surrounding newcomers were looking forward to it. In the end, he just said, "I give up." Are you King kidding me? This time, not only Meng Tong and the others were stunned, but even Lin Yi and the others did not expect it. Giving up was equivalent to admitting defeat. Xiao Ran never said he would do that. How can this be? Then wouldn't Meng Tong have it easy? Qiao Hongkai was dumbfounded. From his point of view, when facing trash like Meng Tong, even if he was not a match for him, he would definitely not let his opponent have it easy. Even if both sides were injured or even fought to the death, he would not hesitate. If Xiao Ran lost without a fight, how is that any different from surrendering to the enemy? Chapter 3773. Yes, according to the rules of the challenge, as long as one voluntarily gives up or admits defeat, the opponent cannot attack again. This way, Meng Tong will not have any chance to take advantage of him. But to be able to make such a decision directly, junior brother Zhao's courage is not small. The bitter senior brother also sighed. In a situation where he knew that his strength was not equal, it was obviously not wise to face Meng Tong head-on. But to take the initiative to admit defeat in front of everyone, this required great courage. If he hesitated even a little, perhaps blood would be spilled on the spot. After Xiao Ran finished speaking, everyone in the audience was stunned for a long time. Even the referee from the mysterious pavilion was stunned for a long time. Only then did he recover and announce, Xiao Ran of K14 at the foot of the mountain has forfeited. This battle, Meng Tong of K15 at the foot of the mountain has won. Humph, at least you know what's good for you. Otherwise, I would have long kicked you into minced meat. Meng Tong glared fiercely at Xiao Ran and sneered. Xiao Ran looked at him expressionlessly. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked off the stage. What welcomed him was a wave of boos from the other newcomers below the stage. However, all of a sudden, the hidden battle intent in his body grew stronger. Wait until after you build your foundation, then come and take care of this guy. Lin Yi smiled and patted his shoulder. Yes. Xiao Ran nodded heavily. When he looked at Meng Tong on the stage again, his battle intent had already been restrained, and once again returned to normal. But Lin Yi, who was familiar with him, knew that the idiot Meng Tong had already been targeted by an extraordinary guy. He did not even need to personally make a move. Perhaps not long after, there would be a brand new Xiao Ran who would challenge this guy. With Xiao Ran's foundation, even if Meng Tong took the lead in building his foundation in these few days. At that time, it would be very difficult to say who would win and who would lose. On the stage, Meng Tong did not come down immediately. According to the challenge rules, with his current position as the owner of Cave Abode number 14 at the foot of the mountain, other than Xiao Ran, who was ranked lower, no one else could challenge him. However, he did not come down immediately. Instead, he stretched out a finger and pointed at Xiao Honkai, who was standing beside Linny. It's your turn next. When the time comes, will you, the lumber waste, also learn to be a coward? I'll wait and see. Meng Tong laughed contemptuously and turned to leave the stage. F***CK, this idiot is so arrogant. Does he really think he's invincible just because he's in the early stage of foundation establishment? Just wait and see. Xiao Honkai clenched her fists. He was not Xiao Ran. Even if he knew that it was wiser to retreat in order to advance, even if he knew that retreating was the wiser way to advance, he couldn't take this lying down. Even if he knew he would lose, he would rather fight to the death with Meng Tong. He would never give up. Lin Yi and the bitter senior looked at each other and shook their heads helplessly. With Xiao Hongcai's upright personality, they couldn't persuade him even if they wanted to. But this was good, letting him fight with Meng Tong, an early-stage foundation establishment expert. This kind of cross-stage combat would be very beneficial for him when he breaks through to foundation establishment. At that time, he just had to be careful not to be killed by Meng Tong. Blue Cloud Pavilion Newcomer Challenge. First round, first match. Although Meng Tong won without a fight, there was at least one thing that was beyond doubt. He did break the awkward deadlock, so that the other newcomers wouldn't be afraid to take the initiative to challenge him just because they were afraid of each other. As expected, a short moment after Meng Tong stepped down from the stage, a newcomer immediately issued a challenge. It was the owner of Cave number 12. Originally, if it wasn't for the scene that just happened and Meng Tong made a reservation for the next round, Xiao Honkai would definitely be the first to challenge him. But as a result, he really didn't plan to fight this round. After all, no matter how upright his personality was, he wouldn't be stupid enough to foolishly waste his true chi in the next round when he knew he was going to challenge someone stronger than him. That wasn't bravery, it was stupidity. However, the owner of Cave number 12 was the first to go up the stage. This was more or less out of everyone's expectations. This was because this guy's name was Cha Wu. Although his strength had barely reached the peak of heaven stage, he was truly a weak newcomer. In the previous 2 rounds, he was the first to leave the stage in the first round, accumulating 1 point. In the second round, he challenged a peak late-stage heaven stage, accumulating 10 points. In total, he had accumulated a total of 11 points from the 2 rounds, ranking last in the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion. This Cha Wu was called a weakling by others, and it was absolutely a well-deserved reputation. He actually dared to take the initiative to jump out after Meng Tong to issue a challenge. This inexplicable confidence was truly shocking. However, when he announced the party he was going to challenge, the audience suddenly burst into an uproar. Cave number 12, Cha Wu, challenges cave number 1, Lin Yi. Cha Wu looked at Lin Yi below the stage and shouted with full energy. Strange things happen every year, but there are especially many this year. Being challenged in public, Lin Yi couldn't help but raise his eyebrows in surprise. A guy who could only be considered weak, even in the peak of heaven stage, actually dared to challenge him. Where did this guy get his courage and boldness from? Originally, according to his judgment, in this kind of one-on-one challenge round, probably only Meng Tong had the guts to challenge him. As long as the others had a little bit of brains, they shouldn't be stupid enough to take the initiative to run into the muzzle. He didn't expect such an accident to happen in the first round. Under everyone's gaze, Lin Yi raised his leg and was about to go up the stage. However, before he went up the stage, he was stopped by Senior Brother Bitter Guy and said a few words. Junior Brother Lin, this is a rare good opportunity to advance by retreating. If you take the initiative to give up this round, you can immediately get cave number 12. This position is not only convenient for you to plunder points later, but you can also suppress Meng Tong at the same time, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Senior Brother Bitter Guy said with a face full of excitement. The rules were laid out here. If Lin Yi took the initiative to admit defeat to this weakling, although it sounded a little funny at first, discerning people could understand the meaning behind it. Although he lost 15 challenge points for a moment of forbearance, he gained a room to turn the situation around. With Lin Yi's formidable strength, as long as he was willing, he could completely fight his way up one cave after another. At that time, not to mention a mere 15 points, even earning 100 points would not be a problem. For Lin Yi, who was trapped in cave number 1 and unable to extricate himself, this weakling at the bottom of Blue Cloud Pavilion was simply a living bodhisattva who could save him from suffering. Such an opportunity was simply something that could not be asked for at any other time. With regards to Senior Brother Bitter Guy's suggestion, Lin Yi replied with a smile, did not say anything, and directly walked up the stage. Looking at Lin Yi going up the stage, there didn't seem to be any anger on his face. He didn't show any fighting intent, let alone any killing intent. Cha Wu couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Sure enough, it was just as he expected. Chapter 3774. This fellow, Lin Yi, was indeed powerful enough to make one's hair stand on end. But in order to show off to his lackeys, he foolishly trapped himself in the first cave abode at the foot of the mountain, unable to extricate himself. He had powerful strength, but no place to use it. If this carried on, the so-called number 1 rookie, Lin Yi, would be naturally wasted in the challenge round. If his biggest competitor, Meng Tong, was more cautious and did not take the initiative to challenge him, it was estimated that until the end of the challenge round, no one would take the initiative to give him points. In the end, he could only hold on to his pitiful starting points and end awkwardly. The first cave abode at the foot of the mountain corresponded to 15 starting points. To other rookies, it was quite a lot, but to Lin Yi, who had obtained full marks for the god level in 2 consecutive rounds, it was not even enough to fill the gaps between his teeth. He clearly had the powerful strength to crush everyone else, but he could only survive the entire challenge round in mediocrity. How could a person like Lin Yi, who always wanted to posture and be in the limelight, be willing to accept this? Even if one used their toes to think about it, one would be able to understand the grievance and depression involved. Of course, to Lin Yi, this was a deep pit of grievance and depression. But to the other rookies, it was an excellent opportunity. It all depended on whether they had the courage or not. When the discerning people knew that challenging Lin Yi was courting death, when the discerning people automatically ignored the number 1 rookie who had fallen into his own trap, suddenly a rookie jumped out to challenge him. Furthermore, this rookie's cave abode ranking was very low. What kind of situation would that be? How would Lin Yi react? Courting death? This was just a subconscious first reaction. Once they came to their senses, any normal person would definitely be able to see the opportunity. Lin Yi was naturally no exception. Thinking about it, as long as he took the initiative to lose the first round, he would definitely be able to earn more than 100 points in the following challenges. Who would be willing to miss such an opportunity? Once he missed it, it would be very difficult to have a second chance. Hence, with this line of thought, Chao Wu, who was considered the weakling among the Blue Cloud Pavilion rookies, suddenly realized that his opportunity had come. It had to be known that although it was not difficult for other rookies to think of this, the problem was that they might not have the courage to do so. Because even when they challenged Lin Yi was very sensible and cooperated with them to admit defeat. If they didn't have the strength, they still wouldn't be able to sit firmly in the number 1 cave abode at the foot of the mountain. Not only would they lose the opportunity to challenge, at that time he would have to spit out the 15 points sooner or later, and it would be meaningless. However, it was meaningless to the other rookies, but for a weakling like Chao Wu, the significance was extraordinary. The reason was very simple. He was weak, and he had only obtained a pitiful 11 points in the first 2 rounds. If he continued to develop like this, it was almost inevitable that he would end up at the bottom of the rankings. Therefore, while the other rookies were still calculating the number of points, he had already sentenced himself to death in advance. Most of the time, a broken pot still needed capital. And this Chao Wu's capital could be said to be blessed by heaven. With his current situation, it was inevitable that he would end up in last place anyway. Now that things had come to this, it was meaningless to care about how many points he had. Instead, he might as well do something that would leave a deep impression on others. When the time came, he might be able to change his fate. For example, right now, when no one dared to challenge the number 1 rookie, Lin Yi, he dared to jump out. In the end, Lin even took the initiative to admit defeat. If this matter were to be spread around, what kind of effect would it have? A person who forced a strong person like Lin Yi to take the initiative to admit defeat. If this unprecedented resume was spread, it would definitely be considered a domineering and cool person. When he entered the Blue Cloud Pavilion, normal people would have to look up to Chao Wu. To put it bluntly, in this challenge, he wasn't afraid that Lin Yi wasn't strong enough. He was afraid that Lin Yi wasn't strong enough. This was because the stronger Lin Yi was, the more this matter would become a brand, and the more Chao Wu would benefit from it. As a rookie, if he wanted to make a name for himself, the rookie assessment wasn't the only way. As long as he was flexible, he could rely on the shoulders of other strong rookies to rise. That was also a good choice. Regardless of the points, he would have the capital to brag about in the future. That was enough. Therefore, taking the initiative to challenge Lin Yi might seem unbelievable to the other rookies. But to Chao Wu, it was a heaven-sent opportunity. As long as Lin Yi's mind was normal like his little brother, Xiaoran, and knew how to adapt to the circumstances, there would be at least a 90% chance of success. Not only would Lin Yi choose to cooperate with him, but Chao Wu also had another advantage. Before the start of the competition, Meng Jueguang had gathered all the rookies together and told them something. It was an important countermeasure against Lin Yi's group. Including Meng Tong, all 12 rookies did not have any restrictions when competing with each other. However, when facing Lin Yi's group, other than the challenge rules, Meng Jueguang had specially added an internal rule. That was, among the 12 rookies, after any one of them challenged Lin Yi's group, The other 11 were not allowed to challenge that person for a week. Violators would be severely punished. This rule was equivalent to a one-sided attack on Lin Yi's group. The goal was self-evident. It was to encourage the rookies to challenge Lin Yi's group as much as possible. Even if they couldn't kill them, they had to tire them to death. And the rookies who challenged Lin Yi could also obtain sufficient time to rest and recover. With this unspoken rule as a cover, Cha Wu's decision to challenge Lin Yi became even more carefree and unscrupulous. When he successfully made Lin Yi admit defeat and occupy Cave Abode No. 1, the other rookies would not challenge him in a short period of time, be it for the sake of points or the additional unspoken rule of Meng Jueguang. And for him, who aimed to obtain bragging rights, this was enough. Looking at Lin Yi's calm expression after getting on the stage, Cha Wu's suspicions were confirmed. He couldn't help but feel overjoyed. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. Today was a great day for Lin Yi to make a comeback. Moments later, the discussions of the rookies gradually died down. Some of them had already seen through Cha Wu's wishful thinking. While they wrung their hands in envy, they did not have much of a temper. After all, they were not as carefree as Cha Wu, who was first from the bottom. To them, points were not dispensable, but a real lifeblood. Even if they knew that the chances of success were high, they might not risk it. Chapter 3775. With that said, both sides did not move at all, nor did they have the tension of fighting to the death. They just stood on the stage and looked at each other. Seeing Lin Yi's indifferent performance, Cha Wu felt relieved. As he expected, Lin Yi had no intention of making a move. It was obvious that he was just like his underling, Xiao Ran, who was ready to admit defeat. Although there was a 90% chance that Lin Yi would take the initiative to admit defeat, Cha Wu still had some doubts in his heart. What if Lin Yi was stupid and decided to beat him to death? With the disparity in strength, if they really fought, it would really be fatal. Now, if Lin Yi really wanted to make a move, he would have already done so. He would not stand there indifferently and waste time. From the looks of it, this No. 1 rookie who loved to show off was probably having a psychological struggle. He could not bring himself to admit defeat in such a short period of time, right? Cha Wu secretly smiled without batting an eyelid. It's fine. As long as you don't make a move, I have all the time in the world to wait for you to admit defeat. He no longer felt any nervousness in his heart. Instead, he felt some regret. He'd heard that the technology in the common world was very advanced and that there was something called a photographic chicken or something. It was said that you could record the fight and show it to other people. It'd be great if he had something like that in his hands right now. He'd be able to record the scene of Lin Yi admitting defeat, and it'd be something he could brag about later on. Unfortunately, no matter how advanced the technology in the secular world was, it was impossible to transmit it to Heaven Island. Ignoring the fact that there were very few cultivators who could teleport to Heaven Island, even if they had the intention, those so-called high-tech gadgets could not withstand teleportation. Not only could they not be teleported, even if they were lucky enough to be teleported, it would only become a pile of scrap metal. It was useless. Time slowly passed. The two people on the stage did not show any signs of making a move. This time, not only did the other rookies below the stage become impatient, even the referee could not help but urge, "Both parties, please pay attention to the time. If you do not make a move in 15 minutes, it will be considered as the challenger forfeiting and the challenged wins." Within 15 minutes, if both parties did not make a move, then the challenger had to take the initiative to attack. Otherwise, it would be considered as forfeiting. This was the clear rule of the challenge. After all, who asked you to initiate the challenge? Half an incense stick of time passed by in a flash. Cha Wu finally couldn't hold it in any longer. Seeing that the referee was about to announce the verdict, he hurriedly said, "Sir Referee, please wait a moment. This newcomer Lin definitely has something to say." At the same time, Cha Wu couldn't help but blame Lin Yi for being too slow. After hesitating for half an incense stick's time, no matter how much of a psychological struggle he had, he should have finished it by now. How could he continue wasting time like this? How boring. Acting pretentious newbies were so pretentious. Wasn't it just opening his mouth to admit defeat? Was there a need to wait for so long? For a moment, everyone's gaze, including the referee, landed on Lin Yi. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "If you insist on saying that, then I really have something to say." Cha Wu heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this. It's finally done. I thought that this guy couldn't bring himself to lose face and was going to change his mind. How **king terrifying. Unexpectedly, Lin Yi sized him up with a faint smile and said with a teasing look, "Brother Cha Wu, are you sure you don't want to admit defeat? Are you sure you don't want to admit defeat? If so, I'm going to start." "Huh? What do you mean?" Instantly, Cha Wu suspected that he had heard wrongly. He stared at Lin Yi in disbelief for a long time. Coupled with the unexpected uproar below the stage, he finally reacted. Not only did this rascal Lin Yi not admit defeat, he even wanted me to admit defeat? This was **king illogical. Was this guy so stupid that he couldn't even figure out the situation? I'm giving you a chance to save yourself. The one who should admit defeat should be you, Lin Yi. How can it be me? If I were to admit defeat, then what the **ck is the point of challenging? Do you think I have too many points and want to give them to you? Not only Cha Wu, all the rookies on stage were baffled. Even Meng Jueguang and company were in a daze. Cha Wu's action of taking advantage of a loophole had made Meng Jueguang extremely angry. Although he had strongly encouraged his rookies to challenge Lin Yi and company, for a weakling like Cha Wu to take the initiative to challenge Lin, he was not to deal with Lin Yi, but to help Lin Yi. Once Lin Yi admitted defeat and switched to cave abode number 12, not only would he create an opportunity for himself, he would also cause great trouble for Meng Tong. Cha Wu's actions were simply a scam. However, to everyone's surprise, Lin Yi did not respond. He did not take the initiative to admit defeat and take the opportunity to dig a hole. Not only did he not grasp such a great opportunity, he foolishly made Cha Wu admit defeat. This could not even be described as stupid. Lin Yi's intelligence was indeed worrisome. Not only Meng Jueguang and company, even senior brother Bitter, Xiao Ran and company were stunned. The principle of retreating to advance was something Lin Yi knew better than the few of them. It did not make sense for him to be unable to see the situation when it was his turn, right? Little did they know that although retreating in order to advance was the best strategy, it was not always necessary to retreat in order to advance. If Lin Yi was in desperate need of points right now, he might have really gone along with the opportunist Cha Wu. But the problem was that he didn't need points at all, even if he stayed at the first cave at the foot of the mountain. If that was the case, what was the point of retreating to advance? Lin Yi looked at Cha Wu, who was at a loss, and said with a faint smile, "What do you think? Do you want to admit defeat directly? Or do you want to have a serious fight with me? To be honest, my hands and feet are a little itchy now. It's just the right time to move my muscles and bones." What the **ck, are you an idiot? Why don't you seize this opportunity and fight with me? What's the use of earning my 4 points? Do you understand the principle of retreating to advance? The reality was too cruel. Cha Wu could not help but roar gloomily. With his weak strength, he really did not dare to fight with a freak like Lin Yi. Otherwise, it would be a light punishment for him to injure his muscles and bones. He might even be killed in one move. It was not worth it to lose his life. However, he was not willing to give up just like that, so he could only use this method to remind Lin Yi. Meng Jueguang and the others in the audience suddenly had a black face. Damn it, this guy did not want to live anymore. He was afraid that he could not help Lin Yi out of the trap. Chapter 3776. You. Cha Wu's eyes suddenly widened. However, just as he said a word, what welcomed him was an incomparably hot punch. Frenzy fist, 20 forms. Boom! Cha Wu did not have any strength to resist. He was directly smashed off the stage by Lin Yi's punch, leaving a human-shaped pit on the ground. He struggled for a long time but could not get up. He could only sit on the ground and vomit blood. Although Lin Yi's punch did not kill him, for a weak rookie like him, Frenzy Fist 20 forms was already a powerful force that could not be resisted. In addition, he was unprepared and caught off guard. It was already Lin Yi's mercy that he was able to survive. His injuries were definitely not light. He would not be able to recover within a few days. Noisy. Lin Yi glanced at the battered and exhausted Cha Wu and then turned to leave the stage under the respectful gazes of the other rookies. For a moment, everyone present, other than feeling baffled by Lin Yi's motive for attacking, was quite shocked. It made many of the opportunists who had the same thoughts as Cha Wu look at each other with lingering fear. Although Cha Wu was indeed recognized as a weakling, he was still a heaven stage great perfection expert. In the end, he was beaten to such a state by an ordinary 20 forms. Other than the ridiculous difference in strength, it could only be said that this fellow Lin Yi was indeed a little cruel. If killing people did not cause any negative effects, with this fellow's overbearing strength, it was possible that he could kill Cha Wu in one move on the spot. However, what made the rookies feel shocked and relieved was that Lin Yi was not cruel to the point of being unscrupulous and killing people casually. Although the challenge did not avoid casualties, but killing people when there was a huge difference in strength and it was unnecessary, it would more or less cause a bad reputation. It would then affect the future development of the 3 pavilions. It was not worth it. Blue Cloud Pavilion Rookie Challenge. First round, second match, Lin Yi wins. The referee finally gave the final verdict to this duel. Lin Yi smiled slightly, although he did not care much about the assessment points. Now that he had obtained 4 points, his total points had reached 124. It felt pretty good, especially after sending a self-righteous fool like Cha Wu flying with a punch. This feeling was really refreshing. Junior brother Lin, I'm really surprised by your decision. I really didn't expect you to do this. Senior brother Ku Bai and the others smiled and greeted him. Indeed, I didn't expect that either. Xiao Ran nodded in agreement. Originally, with him as a precedent, it wasn't difficult for Lin Yi to make the choice to retreat in order to advance. However, he didn't expect Lin Yi to completely ignore him. He had dealt with Cha Wu, the opportunist, in one move. This result was really beyond their expectations. However, Qiao Hongkai said complacently, I'm not surprised at all. What kind of heroic figure is our boss Lin Yi? A weakling like him actually dares to stroke the tiger's whiskers, thinking that he has the 12th abode at the foot of the mountain. Our boss Lin Yi will definitely pay attention to him. How reckless! This kind of clown should be ruthlessly taught a lesson and let him know why flowers are so red. Lin Yi and the others couldn't help but look at each other and smile. This guy's character was really as unyielding as ever. As they spoke, Qiao Hongkai suddenly paused and looked at the ground that was smashed by Lin Yi. Cha Wu, who was still in pain and hadn't gotten up until now, suddenly rolled his eyes. Then, without waiting for Lin Yi and the others to speak, taking advantage of the fact that the other newcomers hadn't made a move yet, Qiao Hongkai suddenly walked up the ring and said loudly, The 13th abode at the foot of the mountain, Qiao Hongkai, challenges the 12th abode at the foot of the mountain, Cha Wu. When these words came out, the audience was in an uproar again, and Cha Wu, who had just suffered a huge loss, was completely dumbfounded when he heard these words. By the time he reacted, Cha Wu only felt his vision blacking out and he almost kowtowed to death on the ground. F***CK. Don't you F***King have any face? Didn't you see that your boss just beat me into such a miserable state? At this time, You actually still want to jump out and hit me when I'm down. Do you still have any King humanity? However, no matter how miserable and helpless he was, the challenge had such rules. As long as you had never been challenged before, then you could not reject the first time someone challenged you. Hence, even if he wanted to cry but had no tears, faced with Xiao Hongsai's direct challenge, Chao Wu could only bite the bullet and go up the ring. He couldn't even escape. The other rookies were looking at him with a gloating look as well as some pity. Although everyone harbored ill intentions, who asked a fool like Chao Wu to be the first to jump out and put on a show. Now, not only did he fail to put on a show, he was seriously injured, and now he had to face Xiao Hongsai's inhumane backstabbing. He really reaped what he sowed. After waiting for Chao Wu to slowly drag his injured feet onto the ring, the mysterious pavilion referee immediately announced, Blue Cloud Pavilion Rookie Challenges, first round. Third match. Abode 13 Xiao Honkai Challenges, Abode 12 Chao Wu. Begin. Xiao Honkai did not immediately make a move. Instead, she looked at Chao Wu and sneered, Weakling, since you dared to jump out and challenge our boss Lin Yi, then you should know the principle of retreating in order to advance, right? Of course, if you don't know, then I can only reluctantly help you. As he was seriously injured, Chao Wu's face was already pale. After hearing Xiao Hongsai's words, his face turned red. This was not because his injuries had recovered, but because he was King angry. What was immediate retribution? This was immediate retribution. Furthermore, it was retribution while you were down, to the point of death. Ignoring the fact that his strength was inferior to Xiao Hongsai's, with Chao Wu's current wretched state, if he were to fight someone, he would probably be lying on the ground before the battle even began. Risking one's life was not the way to play. However, if he were to directly admit defeat, it would hurt his heart. One had to know that he'd only gotten 11 points in the previous 2 rounds, and because he'd challenged Lin Yi before, he'd already lost the 4 points that corresponded to the 14th cave at the foot of the mountain. If he admitted defeat now, he'd have to deduct 4 points from the 11 points. If that was the case, then it would be fine. After all, he was already in last place, so the final number of points wouldn't matter anymore. However, the problem was that there were still fierce people like Meng Tong and Xiao Ran behind him. He might even have to deduct more points in the next few rounds. 3 points for one, and 2 points for the other was definitely not a small amount. If that was the case, then his pitiful points would be completely deducted. If the trial of spiritual herbs were to deduct a few more points, then his points might directly become negative. If that was the case, then it would be a huge joke. Chapter 3777. If he had not taken the initiative to challenge Lin Yi, he, Chao Wu, would still have 15 points. Even if he was trampled by people like Meng Tong and Xiao Ran, it would not be a problem. At least he could maintain a positive score. Now, it was impossible for him to obtain a positive score, but there was hope for him to obtain a negative score. At this moment, Chao Wu wished he could slap himself. K. Why did he challenge Lin Yi for no reason? He had really dug a hole for himself. Unfortunately, at this point, not to mention slapping himself in the face, even a 360-degree beating would be useless. There were only 2 choices left for Chao Wu. He could either take the initiative to admit defeat, or be beaten to death by others. He was clearly injured to such a state. If he insisted on fighting, he could not blame Xiao Honkai if he was beaten to death. A cripple who would die from a single touch was trying to blackmail him, so he had no other choice. He could not show his virtue and take the initiative to give way. All he could do was beat him up. Seeing Xiao Hongsai's imposing manner, as though he was prepared to beat him to death, Chao Wu immediately felt guilty. He hurriedly said, I admit defeat. I admit defeat. Compared to directly losing his life, it was more worth it to admit defeat and lose some points. Even if it was possible for his points to be deducted to negative, he would at least have a chance to struggle. It was better than dying here. Qiao Hongkai immediately laughed out loud and gave him a thumbs up. She said, sarcastically, "You sure know how to advance by retreating. Impressive." Qiao Wu was so angry that his face turned as red as a pig's liver. However, the situation was against him, so he could not let out a fart. He could only limp off the stage dejectedly. What welcomed him was the unbridled laughter of the other rookies. Immediately he felt disheartened. After today's incident, not only had he offended Lin Yi and company, he had also offended Meng Jueguang. Because he had taken advantage of this loophole, he was clearly messing up Meng Jueguang's plans. Meng Jueguang's other rookies naturally did not need to have any scruples. It wouldn't be a problem to step on him when the opportunity presented itself. Qiao Wu was already at the bottom of the rankings in terms of strength and ranking, and now he wasn't doing well on either side. He could already predict what would happen to him next. Putting aside whether or not he could enter the Blue Cloud Pavilion in the future, what he needed to consider now was whether or not he could survive the upcoming challenge. Qiao Wu's intestines were already green with regret. *CK, this kind of thing like speculation really killed people. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Not to mention how much Qiao Wu regretted his actions. After Qiao Hongkai left the arena, she was in a good mood. Not bad. I didn't expect that you, Hongkai, who looks like a hot-blooded young man, would be so good at embroidery. You're so coarse, yet so meticulous. Lin Yi smiled and nodded at him, praising him. Senior Brother Bitter Guy and Xiao Ran heard Lin Yi's words. Only then did they realize the trick and gave him a thumbs up. To be honest, the two of them didn't expect that there would be such a move, but it was seen through by Qiao Hongkai, the hot-blooded young man. You really can't judge a book by its cover, and you can't measure the sea with a pail. Qiao Hongkai chuckled and said, "Even a weakling like him understands the principle of retreating in order to advance. How could I not understand it? Boss Lin Yi, don't look down on me." With his identity as the owner of the 13th cave mansion, coming out to challenge Qiao Wu of the 12th cave mansion at the foot of the mountain, this was not purely adding insult to injury, but a real stroke of genius. First of all, Qiao Wu had already been seriously injured by Lin Yi. If he, Qiao Hongkai, followed up with the last blow, he wouldn't need to consume any true qi, and he would also be able to get 4 points, pinching this jumping clown to vent his anger. And more importantly, he replaced Qiao Wu to become the owner of the 12th cave mansion at the foot of the mountain. This was the real highlight that made people slap the table and exclaim in admiration. Don't forget, Meng Tong had just clamored in front of everyone, naming to challenge him, Qiao Hongkai, in the next round. Originally, Qiao Hongkai was in the 13th cave mansion at the foot of the mountain, just blocking in front of Meng Tong, so it was reasonable for Meng Tong to clamor like this. But now with this, there was Qiao Wu in between him and Qiao Hongkai. This matter was a bit awkward for Meng Tong. If he challenged Qiao Hongkai, then he would have to skip Qiao Wu in the middle, which was equivalent to naturally giving up the 3 points on Qiao Wu. Don't think that 3 points was a lot, but this was a crucial time for him to catch up and surpass Lin Yi. At that time, he might lose these 3 points, then he would really want to cry, but no tears would come out. However, if he didn't give up on these 3 points, he would have to break his promise. He would have to wait for another round before he could challenge Qiao Hongkai. However, he had already made his promise in front of everyone. If he couldn't fulfill it by then, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? If the opponent was an overbearing, strong person like Lin Yi, then it would be fine. But the crucial point was that the opponent was only lumber waist, a mere underling under Lin Yi. How could he, Meng Tong, admit defeat? Then where would he put his face in the future? How could he still be the leader of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion, seeing how Lin Yi, Qiao Hongkai, and the others were chatting happily? Even someone as dumb as Meng Tong quickly realized the danger. He immediately gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, Why didn't I know that Lumber Waist was so cunning? He even used such a dirty trick. He's really despicable. Ninth cousin brother, you have to help me think of an idea. Mang Jueguang heard this, turned around and nodded and bowed to Su Lingchong, asking for his opinion. Young Master Su, what do you think? It's such a small matter. You guys do as you see fit. Su Lingchong didn't care about this at all. He only cared about how to deal with Lin Yi. As for other matters, they didn't even enter young Master Su's eyes. Okay, Meng Jueguang nodded. He was also aware of this. But regardless of whether it was a big or small matter, he had to report diligently. This was the only rule to serve his master. Even if he knew that his master wouldn't care about some small matters, at least he could express his attitude and subtly influence his master. This was a truly brilliant flattering technique. Meng Jueguang then turned his head to look at Meng Tong and sneered cunningly, saying, although the opponent's move is indeed cunning, it's not a big deal. You don't have to care about him. Just follow the original plan and crush each cave abode by cave abode. But won't I lose face this way? Meng Tong's face was flushed red. He had always wanted to be the leader of the newcomers in Blue Cloud Pavilion. He had just challenged Lumber Waist in public, but in the blink of an eye, he went to challenge a weakling. In the eyes of the other newcomers, how is this different from admitting defeat? He couldn't afford to lose face like this. Chapter 3778. That's right. Isn't this the legendary, suppressing one's desires before they rise? Only then did Meng Tong come to a sudden realization. His worries immediately turned into joy as he said, Ninth cousin brother, you're really resourceful and resourceful. Directly stepping on a jumping clown like Trash Chiao is too easy on him. Let him be arrogant. Let him think he's so great, then step on him. The higher he climbs, the more painful it will be to teach him a lesson. That's the logic. Remember, Meng Tong, the most important thing right now is to accumulate points. That's the most practical thing. Try to find a chance to overtake Lin Yi. Force him to be anxious and force him to make mistakes. That's the key. Everything else is secondary. Meng Jueguang earnestly taught, it's fine to step on trash like Lumber Waist. There's no need to take him seriously. As an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm, you need to have the courage and vision of an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. Understand? Yes, ninth cousin is really thoughtful. I'm an expert in the early stage of the foundation establishment realm. Taking a small character like Xiao Honkai seriously is too much. We should leave him hanging like this. Let him think that he is something, and then ruthlessly trample him to death. Meng Tong chuckled. Meng Jueguang laughed, then lowered his voice and warned that Xiao Ran is more sensible and took the initiative to admit defeat. That's why I didn't have a chance to make a move. There's nothing we can do about it. But this Trash Chiao is different. With his reckless personality, when the time comes, even if he knows he's no match for you, he'll still fight you. You must grasp this opportunity. Find a chance for me to kill him in one move. Don't leave him alive. Do you understand me? Understood. Ninth cousin, don't worry. As long as I meet him, this brat will be waiting to die. Meng Tong patted his chest and promised. Testing the depth of Lin Yi's strength and cutting off the two wings of Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai was Meng Jueguang's goal in this round. The first target was still too early. After all, the only newcomers under him who had the strength to test Lin Yi was Meng Tong, an early-stage foundation establishment practitioner. Even a newcomer with strength, like Li Zhengming, wouldn't be able to do much. The others, such as Li Zhengming, weren't qualified. But the second goal was the most important. To get rid of Lin Yi, he had to first get rid of his wings. This was the strategy that Meng Jueguang and Su Lingchong came up with after discussion. After all, they had failed to kill Lin Yi several times before. If they continued to do so, the possibility of success would not be high. They might as well try to get rid of his two underlings, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai. These two wouldn't be as difficult to deal with as Lin Yi. This way, not only could they weaken his strength, but they could also dampen his spirit and force him to do something desperate. It was killing two birds with one stone. But unfortunately, although this plan hit the nail on the head, due to the restrictions of the challenge, no matter how many newcomers Meng Jueguang had, there was no way he could use the human wave tactic. Moreover, because the ranking of Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai was very low, there was only one person who was qualified to challenge them, and that was Meng Tong. Of course, with Meng Tong's strength in the early stage of foundation building, to deal with the two underlings of Lin Yi, he alone was enough. However, to their surprise, Xiao Ran, who was usually quiet, was actually so slippery. He did not give Meng Tong any chance to make a move and directly chose to admit defeat. But then, with Xiao Hongxai's personality, it was impossible for him to admit defeat like Xiao Ran. So what if he was temporarily complacent as long as he was up against Meng Tong? With his mere heaven stage great perfection strength, he would definitely die. That was good too. This was also good. Since Xiao Ran had escaped, then he would use this trash Xiao as an example to draw blood. In the first round of the Blue Cloud Pavilion Newcomer Challenge, the first 3 battles could be said to be full of twists and turns and treacherous. Counting carefully, none of the battles were serious battles of strength, but each battle had a profound meaning. One careless mistake could lead to death, and the danger was self-evident. But after that, whether it was Lin Yi's group or Meng Tong, these few most dazzling newcomers of Blue Cloud Pavilion had finished their challenges. Because of the ranking of the cave abode, no one else could challenge them, so there was nothing for them to do. As for the remaining newcomers, whether it was strength or topic, they were far less eye-catching than these few people. Although they fought a few battles here and there, with some wins and losses, overall there was nothing special to speak of. It was plain and uninteresting. Among these people, Li Jingming's strength was relatively outstanding, and he could suppress the other newcomers. Unfortunately, the situation he was facing now was as awkward as Lin Yi. He was trapped in the second cave abode at the foot of the mountain, unable to extricate himself. He had strength, but there was no place for him to use it. This was something that could not be helped. He could only hold it in and wait for the other newcomers to take the initiative to challenge him. To challenge Lin Yi, firstly, he was Lin Yi's secret lackey, so it was unlikely. Secondly, it was purely sending himself to his death, and he was not that crazy. In the end, there were a total of 7 battles in the first round. Other than the battle between Meng Tong and Lin Yi's organization, as well as the unlucky Chao Wu who overestimated his own capabilities, there were some who were happy and some who were worried. There were no more accidents. In the short span of 3 hours, the 7 battles had ended, and the first round of the Blue Cloud Pavilion Newcomer Challenge had come to an end. The newcomers then dispersed. Those who needed to treat their injuries did so. Those who needed to think of countermeasures did so. And those who needed to cultivate their spiritual herb seeds cultivated their spiritual herb seeds. All of them were busy preparing. After all, the spiritual herb trial and the newcomer challenge were stacked together. The intensity was self-evident. Other than a strong person like Lin Yi, no one could be idle. Not bad, not bad. In the first round of the newcomer challenge, the few juniors have gotten off to a good start. Congratulations. The bitter senior brother said to Lin Yi and company with a look of relief. This was not false at all. Counting Lin Yi and company, Lin Yi won 1 battle and obtained 4 points. Xiao Honkai won 1 battle and obtained 4 points. Although Xiao Ran lost 2 points, he took the initiative to give up and did not give Meng Tong the opportunity to injure him. So, to a certain extent, this was also a victory. More importantly, not to mention the number 1 newcomer, Lin Yi, who no one dared to provoke, Xiao Ran and Xiao Honkai did not consume any qi. This meant that in the following period of time, they did not need to waste time on recovering their qi. They could directly break through to the foundation establishment stage according to plan. Once they succeeded, the situation would be very different when they faced Meng Tong. Chapter 3779. As for Qiao Hongkai, although his strength was far inferior to Xiao Ran's, his personality determined that he was more aggressive. In a critical moment, this personality might play a miraculous role. Moreover, although his current position was not as unique as Xiao Ran's, he was separated from Meng Tong by Qiao Wu. If nothing unexpected happened, Meng Tong would probably trample on Qiao Wu first in order to gain as many points as possible to surpass Lin Yi. Then he would have plenty of time to break through to the foundation establishment stage. Xiao Ran, Hongkai, I'll be waiting for your good news. Lin Yi smiled and encouraged them, then added, There's no need to carry any baggage, just throw it all away. If you fail, at most you'll just waste a foundation establishment pill. What's the big deal? As long as you need it, I'll get it for you in minutes. Don't forget, I'm an alchemist. Qiao Hongkai heard this and laughed. With Boss Lin Yi's words, I'll go back and fight for it. If I really fail, boss, you have to take responsibility for me. Damn, take responsibility my ass. I'm not into men, stay away from me. Lin Yi hurriedly jumped 2 feet away in an exaggerated manner and looked at Qiao Hongkai warily. Senior Brother Bitter and Xiao Ran looked at each other and laughed. Only Qiao Hongkai had a look of hidden bitterness. Boss, you can't do this. Why can't you keep your promise? You're a heartless man who abandons his lover. Get lost. Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Compared to Lin Yi's group's joyous mood, the other Clear Cloud Pavilion's new disciple's face was gloomy and gloomy, to the point where he even had thoughts of suicide. This person was naturally Qiao Wu. Qiao Wu was already at the bottom of the leaderboard. In the end, not only did he lose all his points, but he was also seriously injured because of this. Qiao Wu's current situation could only be described as miserable. Previously on the arena, although Lin Yi did not kill him, no matter what, he was still an expert at the peak of the early stage of foundation establishment. Even if it was only the 20th form of the Frenzy Fist, it was definitely not something that an ordinary expert at the peak of Heaven stage could withstand. The fact that Qiao Wu was still alive was already because Lin Yi had shown mercy, and he had to rejoice. Although it wasn't fatal, with his current ability, he wouldn't be able to recover without at least 7 or 8 days. And after 7 or 8 days, apart from healing, there was nothing else he could do. Not only would he not be able to fight in the next round of the challenge, he would even be forced to give up on the spiritual herb seeds that he was currently cultivating. After all, his original body was already in such a miserable state. How would he have the strength and qi left to serve these pampered masters? However, it was fortunate that he had been cautious and didn't use all 10 of the spirit herb seeds at once. Instead, he only chose 3 to experiment with. Even if he had to give up, he would only give up 3, not all of them. Otherwise, if all 10 spiritual herb seeds withered and died, this segment of the spiritual herb trial would deduct 10 points and Qiao Wu would have to kneel down, and he would never be able to make a comeback. One had to know that after losing 4 points each to Lin Yi and Qiao Hongkai, Qiao Wu was left with a total of 7 points. This didn't even include the dangerous situation that he would have to face Meng Tong, Xiao Ran, and the others. If 10 points were deducted from the spiritual herb trial, he would directly become negative 3 points. After that, he would be messed with by Meng Tong and Xiao Ran. This negative number would only get bigger and bigger. Wanting to make up for it would be wishful thinking. With Qiao Wu's current strength, it was impossible. Otherwise, he wouldn't have fallen to this state today. If he ended the newcomer exam with negative points, then Qiao Wu would be crippled for the rest of his life. With the current situation of the Heavenly Islands cultivation world, most of the cultivation resources were in the hands of the major sections. There was no future for a grassroots cultivator, unless he encountered some heaven-defying opportunity. For a cultivator with average talent like Qiao Wu, Not being able to enter the 3 great pavilions meant that he would at most be able to reach the foundation establishment stage. It couldn't be any better than this. Without the opportunity, he wouldn't even be able to reach the early stage of foundation establishment. He would die as a heaven stage, full circle. If it was in the secular world, a heaven stage full circle was already an incredible expert that could dominate the world. But the problem was that this was the heavenly island. A heaven stage, full circle, was like a dog. The early stage of foundation establishment was just the beginning. A heaven stage, full circle, wouldn't even be able to greet people. Even if he died, he would only have this little bit of strength. He would be trampled on by whoever he saw. However, if he came out with negative points, then Cha Wu could forget about entering the Blue Cloud Pavilion for the rest of his life. If he couldn't enter the Blue Cloud Pavilion, it would be even more impossible for him to enter the other sections. He could only live like this for the rest of his life. I'll die as a heaven stage, full circle. How can such a pitiful, laughable, and shameful thing happen to me? Cha Wu! Cha Wu clenched his fist so hard that his veins popped. He gritted his teeth and muttered to himself. Then, ignoring the serious injuries on his body, he struggled to get up and walked towards the entrance of the cave. Everything that happened before could no longer be changed. He was very clear that if this continued, he would end up with a negative point and not being able to enter the Blue Cloud Pavilion. This was almost an inevitable ending. Therefore, in order to save his own fate, he had to do something. At the very least, he had to make some changes to seek a chance of survival. In terms of the spiritual medicine trial, because of the interruption in the supply of true qi, 3 spiritual medicine seeds were destined to wither. As for the remaining 7, even if he didn't consider the burden of the challenge, with the density of spiritual qi in his cave and the supply of true qi, the success rate of cultivating them was basically close to 0. It could be ignored. In the end, if he could successfully cultivate 1 or 2, it would already be a blessing from his ancestors. However, there was no good way for the spiritual medicine seeds, but it didn't mean that there was no turning around in other areas. Admittedly, with Cha Wu's strength that was close to the bottom, it was not very realistic to fight for as many points as he wanted to in the cruel challenge. He still had this bit of self-awareness. However, he couldn't take the initiative to plunder points from other newcomers, but at least he could think of a way to lose less points. As long as his points weren't too much and he didn't end up with negative points in this segment, it would be considered a victory. Therefore, what he had to do now was to beg for mercy from someone. Seeing that there was no one around, Cha Wu tiptoed to the entrance of cave number 14 at the foot of the mountain next door and touched the restriction. The owner of this cave was originally Lin Yi, then Xiao Ran, but now it had been changed to Meng Tong. Chapter 3780. Cha Wu was seriously injured, but he still forced himself to cheer up. With a face full of flattery, he said, "Boss Meng Tong, you flatter me too much." "How could I be so daring? I'm just following Senior Brother Meng's and Boss's call to give Lin Yi trouble." "So that's how it is." Meng Tong shook his shoulders. "That's right," Cha Wu hurriedly added. "Even if our strength is not good, we can't let Lin Yi be so comfortable. We can't say that we will win, but at least we have to consume some of his true qi. When we get back, we can let his 40 elixir seeds wither. That can be considered as doing a little bit for Senior Brother Meng and Boss Meng Tong, right? It's rare for a weakling like you to have such loyalty. I thought you took the initiative to give points to Lin Yi, that pretentious guy, and defected to the enemy." Meng Tong sneered. Even if he, Meng Tong, was not smart, how could he not see through Cha Wu jumping out to challenge Lin Yi with such an obvious intention? Even if he could not see it himself, there was still the wily Meng Jueguang standing beside him. Although Lin Yi did not think clearly at that time and did not jump out of the first pit, but chose to fight with Cha Wu, in the end, he defeated him with 1 move. Not to mention that he gave him 4 points for nothing. In the end, he did not consume any true qi at all. Do a little bit of bit. That's bullsh asterisk T. Defected to the enemy? Cha Wu's face suddenly changed. He hurriedly smiled and waved his hand, saying, Boss Meng Tong, you must be joking. With my little bit of courage and strength, I can't wait to hug Senior Brother Meng and Boss's thighs. How could I defect to the enemy? Not to mention Lin Yi's unlucky, pretentious look. How could he be as wise and powerful as Senior Brother Meng and Boss? Isn't relying on him looking for trouble? I, your little brother, am not blind. How could I be so unwise? What you said is quite reasonable. With that pretentious fellow's bad luck, how could he contend with the combination of me and ninth cousin brother? Anyone with a discerning eye would know how to choose. It seems like I really misunderstood you before. Meng Tong was instantly refreshed by this round of flattery. In a good mood, he laughed heartily and patted Cha Wu's shoulder. Cha Wu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Meng Tong was simple-minded and easy to fool. Otherwise, it would have been really hard to pass today. Striking while the iron was hot, Cha Wu followed up with another round of flattery, making Meng Tong feel comfortable all over. The time was right. Only then did he gather his courage and carefully approach the purpose of this trip. Boss Meng Tong, speaking of which, you're going to crush that idiot lumber waist in the next round of the challenge, right? Cha Wu sounded nonchalant, but in fact his heart was hanging by a thread. Next round, Meng Tong was stunned. Following that, he sized up Cha Wu playfully and said, Then you are wrong. Aren't you at the 13th cave abode at the foot of the mountain? In the next round, I'm obviously going to use you to pave the way. Cha Wu's heart immediately sank. Although he had expected this before coming, when he really heard it from Meng Tong's mouth, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. But, Boss Meng Tong, didn't you do it in front of all of us previously? In front of everyone, you're going to challenge Lumber Waist in the next round? If you change your mind midway, it's not very good. Cha Wu hurriedly persuaded. Why do you say that? Meng Tong frowned. Boss Meng Tong, think about it. Going back on one's word isn't a big deal to us normal rookies. But you are our rookie boss. What stands out is your prestige. But where does your prestige come from, other than being strong? The most important thing is to keep your word. If a boss goes back on his word, how can he have any prestige? Don't you think so? Cha Wu patiently persuaded. What you said does make sense. Meng Tong pinched his chin and said thoughtfully. In fact, he himself also had such concerns. If not, he wouldn't have hesitated before. After all, he had wholeheartedly regarded himself as the boss of the newcomers. As a boss, he had clearly promised to trample Trash Xiao to death in the next round. How could he go back on his words? However, after being lectured by Meng Jueguang, he threw this thought to the back of his head, just like what Meng Jueguang said. As a foundation establishment realm expert, he had to have the style of an early-stage foundation establishment realm expert. If he took Lumber Waist, who was only a heaven-stage great perfection realm rookie, too seriously and missed out on the actual benefits of points, then he would be overestimating his opponent. Moreover, the losses would outweigh the gains. One was actual points, the other was an insignificant reputation. Moreover, he would be able to get back at Lumber Waist very quickly. It was clear which was more important. However, although that was the case for a rookie boss like Meng Tong, who was extremely prideful, reputation was also very important. If he were to lose his prestige for 3 points, it would not be worth it. Seeing that Meng Tong was tempted, Cha Wu was overjoyed. He continued to persuade him, that's right. With Boss Meng Tong's strength, it would be easy for you to get 100 points in this kind of challenge. When that time comes, you would be able to surpass Lin Yi, that pretentious brat. Why would you be short of these 3 points? For these 3 insignificant points, you would lose your prestige in everyone's hearts. Forgive me for being blunt, but this is a little neglecting the essentials. Is that so? Then does that mean I have to let you go? Meng Tong squinted at him. Isn't that so, Boss Meng Tong? If you let this little brother go and directly trample on that idiot Trash Chow, it would be killing two birds with one stone. Cha Wu beamed with joy as he boasted. Killing two birds with one stone? Kid, why don't you tell me how to kill two birds with one stone? Meng Tong was instantly interested. Think about it, Boss Meng Tong. If you let me off this time, firstly, you won't have to go back on your words, and you'll be able to maintain your prestige in everyone's hearts. Secondly, you'll be able to give up the points in your hands to protect me. Wouldn't that be the legendary, supremely righteous? Who would dare to be disrespectful to such a loyal boss? Don't you think so? Chow Wu analyzed with a serious expression. Kid, your words are very reasonable. Meng Tong nodded. Even in his dreams, he dreamed of gaining the support of the other new disciples. His words carried enormous weight, and no one dared to have the slightest objection. Only then could he be considered the real Clear Cloud Pavilion's big boss. Otherwise, he would only be deceiving himself. Chapter 3781. That's right. I've long since found trash, like Trash Chow, to be an eyesore. This time, I've finally found an opportunity with great difficulty, so I must properly deal with him. Meng Tong's eyes lit up as he listened. Then, Boss Meng Tong, you're saying that you're going to let this little brother off this time and directly trample that idiot Trash Chow to death in the next round. Cha Wu couldn't help but ask with a face full of hope. Meng Tong was stunned when he heard that. Then he had a strange look on his face. He sneered at him and said, When did I say that? Did I say I'm going to let you go? Weakling, don't lie to yourself. Huh. Chow Wu was stunned. After a while, he quickly smiled and said, Boss Meng Tong, my heart isn't good. I can't take fright. Please don't joke with me. Who's joking with you? Do you think I'm so free to joke with a weakling like you and waste my time? Meng Tong sneered incessantly. He didn't have the slightest trace of the complacent expression he had a moment ago after being flattered. After hearing that, Chow Wu was so angry that his mouth became crooked. He had a stomach full of vulgarities, but he didn't dare to curse out loud. F***CK. I've wasted so much saliva to persuade you. If you don't agree, then why the F***CK did you nod at me? Do you have to be so shameless? How the F***CK do you want to be the new boss with this kind of attitude? Meng Tong was a simple-minded guy. In Chow Wu's eyes, he should be easy to fool. He had said it well before. He didn't expect him to suddenly go back on his words. This was really unexpected. Little did he know that Meng Tong was easy to fool. However, he had been warned by Meng Jueguang before that practical benefits were more important than anything else. Even if he really believed Chow Wu and wanted to let him go, Meng Tong didn't have the guts to go against Meng Jueguang's orders. One had to know, Meng Jueguang was not only his ninth cousin, but also his only support. As long as Meng Jueguang said something, what could Chow Wu, a weakling who wasn't liked by others, say anything? Should he listen to Meng Jueguang or listen to the weak Chow Wu? This question was not a multiple-choice question for Meng Tong. After hearing Meng Tong sneer, Chow Wu couldn't help but shiver as if he had fallen into an ice house. Before this, he didn't think that Meng Tong would be such a cold-blooded and overbearing person. He had coaxed and pestered Meng Tong for so long, but he still couldn't move this guy. His painstaking efforts were all in vain. Weakling, listen carefully. Prepare to surrender in the next round. Of course, if you're unwilling, I don't mind showing off my skills. I don't mind showing off my strength, but I won't care whether you live or die when the time comes. Do you understand what I mean? Meng Tong's smile became more and more ferocious as he spoke. Originally, he planned to use Xiao Ran in the first round. He didn't expect Xiao Ran to be so slippery. Once he saw that the situation wasn't good, He took the initiative to admit defeat. So, Meng Tong had a stomach full of energy. If Cha Wu didn't have eyes and took the initiative to go up, the result could be imagined. Yes, I understand. I'll take my leave. Cha Wu was cursing in his heart. He was greeting Meng Tong's family of 18 generations of females, but he still had to maintain a forced smile on his face. However, this smile looked bitter no matter how you looked at it. It was almost the same as a bitter senior. At this point, it was meaningless to say anything more. No matter how miserable Chao was, he could only pinch his nose and retreat. In this way, Meng Tong had already named to take 3 points from him, and then Xiao Ran, who was in the 15th cave at the foot of the mountain, would immediately take 2 points from him. For Chao Wu, who only had the starting point points left, and was destined to lose a lot of points in the spirit medicine trial round, it was almost inevitable that he would accumulate negative points in the first 4 assessment rounds. His future was miserable and bleak. 3 days later, the second round of the newcomer challenge began as scheduled. Because of the 7 matches in the first round, the situation of all the Blue Cloud Pavilion newcomers had gradually become clear. Everyone knew what they should and shouldn't do. So, they didn't fall into a stalemate like last time. They didn't confront each other and directly started fighting. At the foot of the mountain, in the 15th abode of a mortal's cave, Xiao Ran was currently busy concentrating on building his foundation. With his calm and reserved personality, he would definitely not take the initiative to challenge others before he successfully built his foundation. He was not the kind of idiot who would destroy his own Great Wall. Indeed, Meng Tong was the first to go up the stage in Abode 14 at the foot of mountain. Furthermore, he challenged Chao Wu in Abode 13 by name. Although this action was reasonable, it was somewhat unexpected to the other rookies. After all, Meng Tong did not seem like a calm and rational person. For the sake of a trifling 3 points, Meng Tong had directly thrown his vow to declare war against Xiao Hongkai to the back of his mind. This kind of act of going back on one's word and disregarding his face like floating clouds was really not something a simple-minded guy like Meng Tong could do. However, no matter what the others thought, Meng Tong did it. Furthermore, it seemed like he didn't care about the discussions of the crowd. Facing such a powerful and overbearing early-stage foundation establishment expert, a weakling like Cha Wu had no way of resisting. Ignoring the fact that his strength wasn't enough, in fact, even if he had the strength to fight, with his current state of being heavily injured, it was impossible for him to take the initiative. He could only take the initiative to give up. Chao Wu directly admitted defeat, and Meng Tong easily obtained 3 points. Furthermore, he was promoted to the number 13 Immortals cave at the foot of the mountain. This result was logical, and no one was surprised at all. Although Meng Tong had gone back on his word, it was a common occurrence in the cultivation world that was full of deceit. Therefore, it did not cause much discussion. However, in comparison, Chao Wu, who was the weaker party and was in a miserable situation, had become the target of ridicule from the rookies. Serves him right. This brat thought he could take advantage of the opportunity. He really overestimated himself. He clearly knows that his strength is weak to this extent, yet he still dared to do this. He took the initiative to challenge Lin Yi. Only this weakling could think of this. That's right. He doesn't even know what he's made of. He has quite the guts, but unfortunately he has the guts in the wrong place. That's right. Who doesn't know how to speculate? But even if it's speculating, it still depends on whether or not he has the strength to do it. This weakling overestimates himself. If he doesn't have a few tricks up his sleeve, he won't be able to go to Liangshan. Everyone is cheap. With his measly strength, he actually dared to take advantage of Senior Brother Meng and Senior Brother Lin Yi's loopholes. This kind of idiot who doesn't know the difference between life and death. In my opinion, this bastard won't be able to escape the fate of losing points. He can forget about entering Clear Cloud Pavilion ever again. Chapter 3782. Jia Wu's heart sank to the bottom as he listened to these people's sarcasm and ridicule. Although it was normal in the cultivation world to trample on others when they were down, the current situation wasn't just being trampled on by others. It was simply enraging everyone. If Cha Wu was strong and had the confidence to go against Meng Jueguang like Lin Yi, it would have been fine. However, not only was he not strong, he was at the bottom and was in a difficult situation. If he incurred the wrath of the masses, it would be equivalent to cutting himself off from the 3 pavilions. F***CK. He was too smart for his own good. He had really dug his own grave this time. Cha Wu wished he could give himself 2 tight slaps. If he had kept his points to himself and did not have the wild idea of challenging Lin Yi to gain attention, he would not have reaped what he sowed and ended up in such a miserable state. Now, it would be considered a light punishment if he wanted to cry but had no tears. Once he was locked in with negative points and had no chance of entering Blue Cloud Pavilion, all his previous efforts would have been for naught. It would be the end of his life. There was only one ending for him, and that was to be thrown into the mining area. Not to mention Cha Wu's side, the other Clear Cloud Pavilion's newcomers were fighting hard in this round's challenge round. In order to gain more points, each and every one of them fought with all their might, and the scene could be said to be very exciting. However, this excitement had nothing to do with Lin Yi and the others. Xiao Ran was needless to say. He was deep in cave abode number 15 at the foot of the mountain, preparing to build his foundation. As for Lin Yi, he was trapped in cave abode number 1 at the foot of the mountain and could not take the initiative to challenge others. With Cha Wu as a living example, even if the other rookies had the same hope, they did not dare to challenge him at this time. What a joke! Lin Yi, this pretentious guy, did not know what was good for him. His strength was so strong that it was hard to understand. If he took the initiative to challenge him, not only would he not be able to stand out, he would also be beaten up like the next Cha Wu. He might even lose his life. Who would dare to do such a thing again? Among the 3 of Lin Yi's group, the one who had the highest chance of stirring up a storm was Qiao Honkai, who was at the 12th cave residence at the foot of the mountain. Firstly, his cave abode ranking was not bad. He had the right to challenge more than a dozen rookies above him. He had a unique innate advantage. Secondly, in the 13th Immortal's cave at the foot of the mountain, there was Meng Tong, who was in the early stage of foundation establishment. Looking at the entire Blue Cloud Pavilion, the only person who had the confidence to say that he was not nervous was probably Lin Yi. Everyone else, including Qiao Honkai, was under immense pressure. At a time like this, any normal person would try to stay away from Meng Tong as much as possible. Therefore, no matter how she looked at it, Qiao Honkai could use the same trick again. Just like how she challenged Cha Wu in the previous round, she could challenge one more person. Not only could she gain points, but she could also temporarily get rid of the threat of Meng Tong and fight for a rare buffer. However, to the surprise of all the rookies present, Qiao Honkai did not make any moves. She did not take the initiative to challenge, nor was she challenged. Instead, she just stood there without any wind or rain. This result, even senior brother Ku Bai was a little surprised. He couldn't help but ask curiously, "Junior brother Qiao, didn't you say that you would retreat in order to advance? Why didn't you challenge higher?" When he first entered the welcoming pavilion, Qiao Honkai was only an expert at the peak of the late stage of Heaven Stage. Compared to other rookies, he did not have any advantage. But after joining Lin Yi, his strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Even if he faced other experts at the same level as him, he had enough advantages. He dared not say that he could kill all of them, but at least the success rate of challenging higher was not low. In this way, he could once again fight for a chance to turn things around for himself. Before facing Meng Tong, he could win time to break through to the foundation establishment stage. In the eyes of senior brother Ku Bai and the others, this strategy was actually very reliable. However, Qiao Honkai shook his head and said, "Senior brother Ku, you don't understand me. People like me will only take a step back once in a while when I have no other choice. It's not my style to take a step back again and again. So, this time, I will definitely not retreat again. The next round will be the decisive battle between me and Meng Tong. The answer was so resolute that Senior Brother Ku helplessly shook his head and suddenly had nothing to say. After all, Qiao Hongkai was a hot-blooded Qiao Hongkai. In the last round, he played a clever trick and took a step back. This had already reached his limit. It was really unrealistic to want him to retreat again and again on this basis. His attitude was already very firm. No matter what, whether he could succeed or not, he had to fight with Meng Tong in the next round. This was already an unavoidable conclusion. However, if he succeeded in breaking through to the foundation establishment stage in the next 3 days, then it would be better. But if he failed, not only would he have to face Meng Tong with the strength of the heaven stage great perfection, he would also suffer a serious backlash because of the failure to break through. For a heaven stage great circle expert to go into battle with an injured foundation establishment expert, and one who had a grudge with the other party, what kind of ending that would be, even if one used their toes to think about it. The bitter senior brother secretly gave Lin Yi a look, indicating for Lin Yi to persuade him. Although he was the senior brother in charge and Lin Yi and the other two were nominally under his protection, everyone knew what was going on in reality. At the end of the day, Lin Yi was the core of their group. Once he spoke, not only would Xiao Ran and Qiao Hongkai listen to him, even Senior Brother Ku would automatically follow his arrangements. This was something that Senior Brother Ku Qian had already understood a long time ago. Although Qiao Hongsai's character was more stubborn, once he made up his mind, he would not turn back until he hit the wall. Even if he hit the wall, he would not turn back until he hit the wall. However, this also depended on the person. It was useless for Senior Brother Ku Bai and the others to persuade him, but if it was Lin Yi, it might not necessarily be useless. Lin Yi's position in Qiao Hongsai's heart was absolutely high. One sentence from him was at least worth 100 sentences from others. However, Lin Yi smiled and said, "Then you work hard and strive to break through to the foundation establishment stage before you face Meng Tong. I'm waiting to see your performance." "Okay, boss, just wait and see. I'm going into seclusion now." Qiao Hongkai waved his fist excitedly, turned around, and went into his cave house, number 12 at the foot of the mountain. Chapter 3783. Once Qiao Hongkai failed to break through to the foundation establishment stage, Meng Jueguang and Meng Tong would definitely not let him go. They would take the opportunity to kill him in the arena easily, forcing Senior Brother Ku and Lin Yi to be unable to intervene. It's okay. Don't be fooled by Hongsai's reckless appearance. I can guarantee that he must have thought through these things more thoroughly than us. Since he has already made up his mind to break through, we have no reason to hold him back. Just let him do it. Lin Yi patted Senior Brother Ku's shoulder and comforted him. In his opinion, if Qiao Hongkai failed to break through to the foundation establishment stage, he would probably admit defeat like Xiao Ran based on his rough performance in the last round. It was unlikely that he would foolishly risk his life to show off. Even if Qiao Hongkai really fought with Meng Tong, Lin Yi was confident that he could save him as long as he could hold on to his last breath. Therefore, to a certain extent, Lin Yi had the ability to save the situation, so there was no need to worry too much. At this time, Xiao Ran suddenly said thoughtfully, "Boss Lin Yi, Senior Brother Ku, you don't have to worry too much about him. I have a feeling that Hongkai is very likely to surpass me." After a few days of full adjustment, Xiao Ran felt that he had almost 80% confidence in breaking through to the foundation establishment stage. He planned to make preparations in the next 2 days. However, no matter how well prepared he was, the process of breaking through to the foundation establishment stage differed from person to person. People like Xiao Honkai, who are full of vigor, might be able to achieve results in a moment. But if it was him, Xiao Ran, the process would inevitably be like boiling porridge over a slow fire. Regardless of success or failure, it would probably be a stalemate for a period of time. This is good. Honkai is just suitable to be the vanguard. It's not bad to let him fight with Meng Tong first. Then, Xiao Ran, you can make a backup move. Both sides have double insurance. That would be complete. Don't be idle here. Hurry up and go into close seclusion and wait for good news. Lin Yi said with a smile. Okay. Xiao Ran nodded and bid farewell to senior brother Kubai, then turned around and walked into the number 15 abode of Immortal's cave at the foot of the mountain. After watching Xiao Ran leave, the bitter senior brother turned to look at Lin Yi and said with emotion, Junior brother Lin, I won't hide it from you. Before today, I always thought that you were the dragon among us, but now I suddenly have a feeling. Our junior brother Xiao and junior brother Qiao are not ordinary people either. If they follow junior brother Lin, they will definitely soar into the sky in the future. On the other hand, as a senior brother, I don't have much talent or ability. This is all I can do for the rest of my life. Senior brother Ku, you're belittling yourself. Lin Yi put an arm around Kubai's shoulder. I'll take this opportunity to give you a piece of advice as a disciple. We practitioners need to have confidence. If you don't even believe in yourself, then you'll have to face the consequences. If you don't believe in yourself, how can you expect to break through? By the way, senior brother Ku, how are the effects of the 2 foundation-breaking pills you gave me last time? Senior brother Kubai smiled awkwardly and said, I'm afraid that I'll waste your efforts, so I'm still making preparations. I haven't taken them yet. No wonder. Lin Yi held his forehead, speechlessly. No wonder he hadn't seen any movement from senior brother Kubai until now. He thought that he had failed to break through the barrier. It turned out that he was just as cautious as Xiao Ran. He didn't dare to take it easily. To be honest, with senior brother Kubai's strength and foundation over the years, plus the foundation-breaking pills that Lin Yi gave him, he would be able to break through to the peak of the early stage of the foundation-building realm. Once he broke through to the peak of the early stage of the foundation-building realm, there was almost a 100% chance of success. There was no need to worry too much. Senior brother Ku, I have to say something to you. You are our leader, and we're counting on you to shelter us from the wind and rain. Besides, since I can refine foundation-breaking pills, you don't have to be so thrifty, senior brother Ku. Use them first, and I'll refine more if there's not enough. Lin Yi advised. When Lin Yi said that, senior brother Kubai couldn't help but blush. He nodded repeatedly and said, Junior brother Lin, you're right. I'm used to being poor, and I'm afraid of wasting good things. That's why I don't dare to touch them. I've forgotten that you're our alchemist. If it's not enough, I won't stand on ceremony. This guy was really afraid of being poor. He was guarding the good things, but didn't dare to use them. Lin Yi shook his head speechlessly, and then said, Of course, no problem. Oh right, senior brother Ku. Recently there's a rumor that Su Lingchong is preparing to protect Meng Jueguang to take over the position of third pavilion master. Have you heard about it? There's such a thing? Senior brother Kubai was shocked. In fact, Lin Yi knew about this news from Li Jingming's intelligence. It was still in the brewing stage of top secret. It was normal that senior brother Kubai didn't get wind of it. If this matter really becomes a foregone conclusion, it won't be good. Senior brother Kubai said with a face full of lingering fear. Although what Lin Yi said was still groundless, if he thought about it carefully, if Su Lingchong really wanted to push Meng Jueguang to take over the position, the possibility of success was really not small. According to the usual practice, the position of third pavilion master of Welcoming Pavilion would be given to someone from Blue Cloud Pavilion. If there were no special accidents, Soaring Sky Pavilion and Mysterious Pavilion would not intervene. However, Although the position of third pavilion master did not have much power, it was still considered to be in the upper echelons of an independent department. In the end, which disciple of Blue Cloud Pavilion to take over the position had to be submitted to the Elders Guild for review. Generally speaking, for this unimportant position, no matter which disciple was submitted, the Elders Guild would only acquiesce and not reject it. However, if someone objected to this, the Clear Cloud Pavilion would not go against the Elders Council's decision. Therefore, if Su Lingcheng took the route of the upper echelons and let his grandfather Su Yuanzheng speak on behalf of Meng Jueguang, Meng Jueguang's position as third pavilion master would basically be stable. No one would be able to compete with him. Once Meng Jueguang took the position of third pavilion master, he would have more power in his hands. He would be able to reach out to everything. At that time, it would be even more difficult to say what would happen to them. However, Senior Brother Ku, you don't need to be anxious. I heard that in order to compete for the position of third pavilion master, you need to have the strength of at least the middle stage of the foundation building realm. Therefore, we still have a chance to muddy the waters and fight for an opportunity. However, before that, Senior Brother Ku, you must improve your strength. Lin Yi analyzed. Without strength, one would not have the right to speak. It would be useless to talk and fight for more opportunities. Although Lin Yi's strength was enough, if he wanted to compete for the position of third pavilion master, it was obviously not enough for him as a new disciple. Only Senior Brother Ku would have the chance to take over. Of course, the prerequisite was that he had enough strength. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.